Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Planting the Immortality Tree in the Wizarding World. Chapter 61. The next afternoon, Ronan returned to his bungalow. He sat down on a chair at the dining table, collapsed, poured himself a glass of wine, and drank it. After spending most of the day, he finally collected all the main materials for refining the primary transformation potion. He personally went to the Gulf Forest and the coastal forest outside the Triumph City to catch the lacewings and killer leeches. His mental power was not bad. He opened his spiritual sense and slapped the light body talisman, and soon found the two objects. He caught a lot, put them in a wooden barrel, and brought them back. After he returned to the Triumph City, he went to Tom's pharmacy and the butcher shop in Toshan that sold magic beast materials. He bought the liquid grass picked on the moonlit night, the two-eared grass picked at dawn, the horns of the two-horned beast, and the snake skin of the human-faced tree snake. It cost him 7,000 gold coins in total. The price was almost as high as a storage ring. After all the materials were ready, Ronan condensed 10 wizard hands and began to make potions. Another room in the bungalow was where Ronan made potions. Inside was a large table, on which were placed crucibles, grinding mortars, extraction bottles and other potion-making utensils. The primary transformation potion was a second-level potion. Ronan had never made a second-level potion before. The making of a second-level potion was extremely difficult for a wizard apprentice. First, the second-level potion involved a technique that was difficult for wizard apprentices to understand. Second, the second-level potion had a control over the temperature and timing of the potion, which was difficult for wizard apprentices to grasp. Third, the second-level potion had many steps, and it was difficult for wizard apprentices to concentrate for a long time with their mental power. But this was not a problem for Ronan. Hongmeng could disassemble and visualize the technique, allowing him to understand it better. Moreover, Hongmeng could record the temperature and time, so that he could better grasp it. And his mental power was not low. Especially after practicing the Shenyan Ju, his mental power increased greatly. Ronan followed the steps on the parchment and did it step by step. There are a total of 60 steps to refine the primary transformation potion. These include multiple extractions, dilutions, crystallizations. If one step is not grasped well, you have to start over. Fortunately, Ronan has Hongmeng to analyze and continuously feedback the information flow to him. And he has enough mental power, so that he can react immediately when the information is generated in his mind, so that the refining process will not go wrong. After more than 2 hours, Ronan concentrated on pouring the liquid in the crucible into a ceramic medicine bottle. The liquid was purple and bubbling. Finally, it's done. Single quote. After pouring all the liquid into the medicine bottle and plugging it with a cork, Ronan breathed a sigh of relief. Even with his strong mental power, coupled with the fact that his lifelong immortal tree was constantly restoring his spirit, his brain was a little tired after a long time of refining. After all, in the past 2 hours, Hongmeng analyzed everything that was being refined, and the information flow was like a river bursting its banks, pouring into his brain. He only refined the main ingredient liquid. According to the records of the potion formula, as long as you drink the liquid made from the main ingredient and chant a spell, you can change your body and bones for 2 hours. However, the breath and magic fluctuations will not change. If you really want to impersonate someone else, you have to add the things of the person being impersonated, such as hair, blood, etc., as well as the magic power of the person being impersonated, as auxiliary materials to the liquid made from the main ingredient. After drinking it, you can completely transform your breath and magic fluctuations into the impersonated person. 5 days later, Ronan went to find Paul. After all, it was too incredible to refine a second-level potion in 1 day. However, refining the potion in 5 days also surprised Paul. You are really a genius in alchemy. When Ronan had previously refined anti-aging and anti-darkening agents with extremely low success rates, Paul also sighed like this. It's a pity that the Kingdom Wizard Academy only selects students based on wizard qualifications. If your talent for alchemy spreads to the Wizard Islands, perhaps some schools that study potions will rush to recruit you. Ronan stopped Paul from continuing and asked him to drop a drop of blood into the potion and then inject magic power. Afterwards, Ronan began to recite the spell recorded on the parchment. Paul's blood and magic power merged into the potion. The purple potion turned dark purple. After taking a look, Ronan immediately picked up the potion bottle, put it to his mouth, and drank the primary transformation potion. The potion didn't taste good, sour, astringent, bitter, all exploded in his mouth. Soon, a bottle of potion was drunk by Ronan. Immediately afterwards, Ronan's skin began to wriggle all over his body. His hair began to curl and change color. After a while, his whole body was completely transformed into Paul's appearance. It's amazing. Paul looked at Ronan's appearance and couldn't help but sigh. Quickly take your set of clothes and change them for me, Ronan immediately said. Also, your school badge. 2 hours are precious, he doesn't want to waste it. Paul responded and immediately took out his clothes and school badge. After Ronan changed his clothes, he left Paul's residence, picked a deserted place, used the light body talisman, and ran away. Half an hour later, Ronan arrived at the upper city of Triumph City and walked straight to the Kingdom Wizard Academy. Soon, they arrived at the main gate of the Kingdom Wizard Academy. The Kingdom Wizard Academy is an ancient castle with a magnificent atmosphere. Standing at the main gate, you can see dozens of wizard towers in the castle. After taking the wizard qualification test, he came here again after several months. There are several witchcraft formations at the main gate. Only those who are led by someone or have the academy badge can pass through the witchcraft formation. When he came here for the test before, he was led by a wizard apprentice from the academy. Ronan took out the Silver Academy badge with Paul Wilson's name engraved on it, held it in his hand, and walked towards the main gate. When he walked to the main gate, ripples appeared in front of his eyes, and he safely passed through the witchcraft formation and entered the academy. He had been to the academy before, so he knew where the library was. It was a tall tower with a dome and 5 floors, which was different from those pointed wizard towers with 10 floors or more. He heard from Paul that this library was for wizard apprentices to enter and practice. Moreover, wizard apprentices of different levels can only move in the corresponding areas. Every time you enter the library, you have to consume the college points in the college badge. College points can be exchanged for gold coins. Or, you can also get college points by helping the professors in the college. After Ronan entered the library, he passed through several witchcraft formations. There was a ripple in front of his eyes, and the string of numbers on the college badge in his hand suddenly twisted and decreased by 30. After entering the library, Ronan's eyes suddenly lit up. He saw that the sky above the library was actually a night sky. There were moons and stars in the night sky, emitting a brighter light than in reality. According to Paul, there are 5 floors in the library, and the first-level wizard apprentice can only move on the first and second floors. The second-level wizard apprentice can go to the 3rd and 4th floors. The 3rd-level wizard apprentice can go to the 5th floor. The bricks and stones that make up each floor are hidden with witchcraft formations. Not bringing the school badge, not being the person, and the apprentice level is not enough will trigger witchcraft. Paul is a 2nd-level wizard apprentice, and he can only go to the 4th floor. Because the maintenance time of the primary transformation potion is only more than an hour. This time he came to record the knowledge of alchemy. As for other books, he can wait until he refines more transformation potions in the future and then come to record them. So, he walked quickly, looking for the bookshelf of alchemy knowledge. There are other wizard apprentices in the library. Each of them looked focused or indifferent, as if they were immersed in knowledge. Ronan found the basic knowledge of alchemy on the 1st floor. He opened the book, turned the pages quickly, and summoned Hongmeng to start recording. The basic knowledge of alchemy on the 1st floor was a basic introduction to alchemy, and explained the assembly of alchemy parts. How to integrate magic ore and how to carve magic patterns were not mentioned. After recording several books on alchemy, Ronan went to the 2nd floor. The alchemy knowledge on the 2nd floor was more advanced on the basis of the 1st floor. He thought that the design of this library should be to place corresponding books according to the level of wizard apprentices. Ronan recorded it layer by layer. After an hour and 10 minutes, Ronan finally recorded all the alchemy knowledge from the 2nd to 4th floors with Hongmeng. After recording, he hurried downstairs, walked out of the library, and walked quickly out of the academy. After walking out of the academy, he walked to a place with fewer people. When he reached an empty alley, the muscles on his face began to wriggle. Gradually, his face, hair and body returned to their original appearance. He immediately took off Paul's wizard robe with his wizard's hand and changed into his own clothes. Then, he left the upper city and returned to the bungalow in the middle city. Sitting down at the dining table, Ronan poured a glass of wine, moistened his throat, and summoned Hongmeng to retrieve the alchemy knowledge. At present, he knew all the alchemy methods that a second-level wizard apprentice could learn, as well as the specific steps of integrating magic ore and carving magic patterns. In alchemy, before integrating magic ore and carving magic patterns, the materials to be refined must be softened by hot melting. If an alchemist wants to complete the refining of magic tools alone, he must practice fire magic. He guessed that the reason why Paul's friend asked Paul for help was that he didn't want to be distracted by practicing fire magic. However, there is a treasure refining spell in Qingmu sword art. As long as you chant the spell, you can use the power of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to soften the material. When wizards refine weapons, they need to integrate magic ore. And the method of incorporating metals is also used in the sacrifice of the Qingling sword in Qingmu sword art. The Qingling sword can be sacrificed using only Qingling Qian bamboo. However, adding some rare metals can make the Qingling sword more powerful. Ronan wanted to try to add metals from the wizard world. In the alchemy books, he learned about 20 kinds of magic metals. Magic metals are metals that can carry and conduct magic power. Among them, the most precious are mithril and refined gold. Ronan heard that both metals are in the hands of the 7 major wizard families in the kingdom, and they are rarely circulated. They are things that cannot be bought with Valant gold coins. Ronan planned to use other high-grade metals to strengthen the Qingling sword first. Later, he would slowly plan mithril and refined gold. The most content in the alchemy knowledge he recorded was magic patterns. Carving magic patterns on magic tools can increase the power of magic tools. He wrote down more than a dozen magic patterns on the 4th floor of the library. Sharp magic patterns, armor-breaking magic patterns, spell-breaking magic patterns, paralysis magic patterns, frost magic patterns, scorching magic patterns. The alchemy books said that although magic patterns can enhance the power of magic tools, you can't just carve several magic patterns on a magic tool. For example, if you carve frost magic patterns and scorching magic patterns on a magic tool at the same time, the 2 magic patterns will cancel each other out. Ronan chose 4 non-mutually exclusive magic patterns from the dozen or so magic patterns, namely sharp magic patterns, armor-breaking magic patterns, spell-breaking magic patterns, and paralysis magic patterns, and planned to add them when refining the Qingling sword. Thinking about this, Ronan stood up. Arriving at the room for refining medicine, he took out the materials for refining the primary transformation potion and placed them on the laboratory table. He had learned from Paul before about the place where the magic metal was sold privately. He had to change his appearance first and then go to buy it. Ronan used his mental power to condense 10 wizards, and then began to refine. After about 2 hours, 3 primary transformation potions were refined. Primary transformation potion, proficiency 2%. The primary transformation potion has also reached the proficiency level. As long as it continues to be refined, the refining speed will be faster in the future. The quality of the potion will be improved, and the potion's effectiveness will last longer. Ronan drank a bottle of transformation potion. Suddenly, the magic power in the potion rose from his abdomen and spread to his whole body. His muscles and skin began to wriggle, and his bones itched slightly. Ronan used his mental power to control his skin, muscles and bones. Soon, he turned into a thin-lipped young man with golden curly hair. Because no other people's things and magic power were added to the potion, the breath and magic power fluctuations did not change. However, the ancient wood longevity skill that Ronan practiced was close to nature, the breath was very peaceful, and the magic power fluctuations were almost zero. Although there were no other people's things and magic power, the camouflage power was only a little worse. Ronan put on his cloak, went out, and walked towards Goosen blacksmith shop. Goosen blacksmith shop was the blacksmith shop that Paul told him about, which sold magic ore and magic metal privately. Goosen blacksmith shop was a shop that made armor for knights. The magic ore and magic metal in the shop were originally used to make armor for knights. Armor made of magic ore and magic metal is convenient for alchemists to enchant. If a knight who has registered in the register buys armor there, he must register his personal information completely. The amount of magic ore and magic metal integrated into the armor must also be registered. The amount of magic ore and magic metal used by Goosen blacksmith shop and where they flowed are all under the supervision of the royal family. However, the owner of Goosen blacksmith shop also wants to make more money. He will do some tricks in the circulation records of magic ore and magic metal, so as to sell part of the magic ore and magic metal privately. Because he took a lot of risks, the price of selling this part privately would be much higher than the normal transaction. Goosen blacksmith shop is in the lower city. Ronan used the light body talisman and walked in an unmanned place. After about half an hour, he arrived at the door of Goosen blacksmith shop. The Goosen blacksmith shop occupies a large storefront. The furnaces inside were burning with blazing fires, and waves of heat were blowing in the face. Several big men, bare-chested, revealing their muscular bodies, held a dark hammer in their hands, and kept hitting the iron sheets, making deafening noises. According to Paul's description, Ronan found the owner of the Goosen blacksmith shop, Goosen Noel. Goosen has a quarter of dwarf blood, and his whole body is square in proportion. He is also bare-chested, with two chest muscles like rocks and a slightly protruding belly. His face is full of fierceness, with a pipe in his mouth, and he puffs on the cigarette while forging iron. Mr. Noel. Ronan walked up and performed a noble etiquette. Paul Wilson introduced me here. Goosen glanced at Ronan, nodded, put down the hammer in his hand, and said, "Follow me." Then, he took Ronan to a basement. In the basement, there were various magic ores and magic conducting metals. Ronan immediately used his divine sense and Hongmeng to analyze the magic conducting metals. Finally, he selected two magic ores and metals mentioned in alchemy books, wood magic crystal and Qingyuan copper. Both metals are conducive to the conduction of wood mana. When adding metals to the Qingling sword, the quality is more important than the quantity. The volume of wood magic crystal and Qingyuan copper he needed was only the size of a fist. Ronan immediately asked the price. Goosen answered that the price was more expensive than he expected. Fortunately, he now has enough gold coins. Ronan took out 3 large wooden boxes from the storage bag he kept close to him. He waved his hand and dropped it on the ground. Ronan opened one of the wooden boxes and put some of the gold coins back into the storage bag. "This should be enough. Do you want to find someone to count?" Ronan said. Goosen immediately opened the wooden boxes one by one and inserted his big hand into the pile of gold coins to see if the wooden boxes were full of gold coins. After checking all 3 wooden boxes, he lifted each box slightly and tested the weight. "It should be about the same, but I can't find anyone to count it now." Ji Sen said. "You take the materials first. If the money is not enough, I will find Paul." Ronan put the wood yun magic crystal and Qingyuan copper into the storage black ring and left the blacksmith shop. Ronan returned to the bungalow, cut the 500-year-old Qingling Qian bamboo into several sections and put them into the storage bag. Then, he used the wind-chasing talisman and left Kaishuan City. He didn't know what would happen when refining the Qingling sword, so he planned to find a hidden place to sacrifice. Although the secular world of the world of immortal cultivation is safe enough, it is impossible to sacrifice in the secular world where the spiritual energy is extremely thin because it requires the help of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth when refining. In Kaishuan City, there are wizards, and in the immortal realm of Wanjun sect, there are monks. He had to find a place where there were neither wizards nor monks. And there were many such places in the kingdom of Valant. The concentration of energy particles in the wizard world is high, but not every place has wizards. Wizards gather in big cities, especially in Triumph City, the capital of the kingdom. Those remote and backward places will not have wizards living. So, Ronan left Triumph City and immediately used several amulets and wind-chasing amulets on himself. His figure suddenly accelerated and flew along the deserted path. He arrived at a remote town 300 miles away from Triumph City and rented a mansion. The mansion had a cellar, which was the wine cellar of the previous residents. Ronan went to the cellar and began to sacrifice the Qingling sword. Ronan sat cross-legged in the cellar, forming seals with his hands and muttering something. In front of him was a large ball of white light, and the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was attracted by this ball of white light and gathered into it. The essence of the 500-year-old Qingling Qian bamboo was in the white light, and the rest of the residue fell to the ground. After more than 6 hours of refining, a faint green light appeared in the white light. This was the sword embryo of the Qingling sword. After having the sword embryo, other things can be added to it. Ronan's mind moved, and he took out the Wood Yun magic crystal and Qingyuan copper from the storage ring. The Wood Yun magic crystal is a 6-sided diamond crystal with the color of emerald. Qingyuan copper is a small piece of bronze emitting a green light. Ronan condensed 2 wizard hands, grabbed the 2 objects, and put them into the white light. Under the effect of the treasure refining spell, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered, and the 2 objects gradually merged with the sword embryo of the Qingling sword. The light green light in the white light slowly deepened. After about 2 hours, the 2 objects were completely integrated into the sword embryo. The sword embryo showed a green color. Then, Ronan began to carve magic patterns on the sword embryo. Carving magic patterns, like drawing talismans, is a test of precision and concentration. Fortunately, Ronan had the assistance of Hongmeng, and he also had excellent mental power. He formed seals with both hands and recited the treasure refining formula while using his mental power to draw the Zhengjin Qi in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, gathering it into a tiny sharp blade that was invisible to the naked eye, and carved magic patterns on the sword embryo. A sword is not big, so the magic patterns that can be carved are limited. The patterns between magic patterns cannot overlap, otherwise the magic weapon will be destroyed. Ronan planned to carve 4 kinds of magic patterns: sharp magic pattern, armor-breaking magic pattern, spell-breaking magic pattern, and paralysis magic pattern, so he had to make a plan first. He first used Hongmeng to simulate the arrangement of the 4 kinds of magic patterns on the sword in his mind. Until he found a solution that the 4 magic patterns would not interfere with each other, he began to carve. The Zhengjin Qi was pulled by his mental power, and the patterns were slowly carved on the sword embryo. This was his first time carving magic patterns, so he carved very carefully and slowly. After more than 5 hours, all 4 magic patterns were carved on the sword embryo. Then, he continued to chant the treasure refining spell, and the sword embryo gradually took shape, and the magic patterns on it stretched. After more than 3 hours, the Qingling sword finally took shape. He immediately withdrew his magic power. The white light suddenly disappeared. A 4-foot-long Qingying sword appeared in front of him. He condensed a wizard's hand, grabbed the flying sword, and brought it in front of him. There were lines on the sword of the flying sword, which looked like cloud patterns at first glance. But in fact, it was the arrangement of sharp magic patterns, armor-breaking magic patterns, law-breaking magic patterns, and paralysis magic patterns. Although the Qingling sword was sacrificed, he still couldn't control it. He also had to use a formula from the Qingmu sword art, combined with the power of the ancient wood longevity art, to make the Qingling sword recognize its master and refine it into his dantian. In this way, the Qingling sword could be truly used by him. So Ronan used the ancient wood longevity power and injected it into the Qingling sword, chanting something. The Qingling sword seemed to have spirituality and gradually matched his ancient wood longevity power. This process was not difficult, but it took a long time. According to the Qingmu sword art, you can take time out every day to feed the sword with power. After more than 10 days or a month, you can let the flying sword recognize its master. But Ronan has 2 natal longevity trees, which always restore his power and mental strength. He can use power to feed the sword for a long time. Before he knew it, Ronan had been in the cellar for 3 days. Suddenly, he felt something. He formed a seal with his hands. Suddenly, the Qingling sword turned into a green light and flew into his meridians and directly into his dantian. He looked inside his dantian and immediately saw a Qingling sword hanging in the misty ancient wood longevity magic power. The world of cultivating immortals is deep in a forest in the secular world. Ronan was alone, standing in the clearing in the forest. Ronan performed a sword technique and felt something in his heart. A bright green flying sword suddenly flashed in front of him. Above the flying sword, there are dense cloud patterns. In fact, these are 4 magic patterns arranged by Ronan. The sharp magic pattern can make the flying sword and the sword light of the flying sword sharper. Armor-piercing magic pattern. When encountering physical obstruction, the flying sword can produce destructive magic power. Breaking magic patterns. When encountering magic obstruction, the flying sword can generate the power to break the magic. Paralysis magic mark. If the person is hit by the flying sword, he will be paralyzed. Ronan flipped his right hand holding the sword technique, and the flying sword immediately buzzed, and Pei Ran's sword energy exploded. With one point of finger, the flying sword immediately turned into a blue rainbow and shot forward. Boom! The flying sword flew through the woods, and the trees broke and fell to the side. The originally dense forest immediately revealed a bright path. The dust caused by the trees hitting the ground flew all over the sky. Ronan used his magic power again, and the flying sword continued to move forward, stabbing straight towards a mountain. When the flying sword encounters the hard rock, the sword energy and the magic power of the armor-piercing magic pattern are activated together. Phaegian penetrated inch by inch, and the mountain rock was like tofu to Phaegian. Ronan controlled the Qingling sword, and after circling around the rocks for a week, he used the sword technique. Suddenly a cloud of stone dust splashed up from the mountain. The green flying sword flew out from the stone dust. With a move of Ronan's hand, the flying sword turned into a streak of green light and was put into his sleeve. Then, the flying sword entered his meridians and went straight to his dantian. It has continued to be nourished by the longevity magic power of the ancient trees in the dantian. Ronan discovered that the immortality of ancient trees has the effect of making vegetation grow. The Qingling sword made from 500 years of green cloud bamboo sacrifice is soaked in the immortality of his ancient wood. The age of the green cloud bamboo is actually increasing. Okay, there is one more magic weapon to protect the Tao. Single quote. He can put the Qingling sword into his dantian. This Qingling sword is no different from the magic weapon described by the monks in the world of cultivating immortals. During these days when he was out, he had been paying attention to the safety of the two natal longevity trees. Before he left, he used the Shen Shen Ju to separate two strands of spiritual consciousness and injected them into the two trees. He can sense everything within a 300-meter radius centered on the two natal immortality trees. Nothing happened around his bungalow these days. Go back and continue practicing longevity skills and cultivating longevity trees. Single quote. Thinking of this, Ronan's heart moved and he disappeared in the woods. Later, he appeared in the cellar of the town outside Triumph City. He used a stripping charm to take off the clothes from the world of cultivating immortals, and then put on the medieval-style clothes from his previous life, then left the mansion and returned to the Triumph City. In the triumphant city, the sun rises high and everything grows. Ronan was sitting cross-legged in the small botanical garden, practicing the ancient tree longevity technique. Sunlight shines in from the windows of the botanical garden and hits dozens of plants, showing a thriving scene. Ronan discovered that practicing next to these plants, under the influence of Heart of Nature, the speed of practicing the ancient wood immortality technique has accelerated. He kneaded the formula with both hands and placed it on his legs, showing the 5 heart to the sky cultivation posture. He looked at his nose with his eyes and his heart with his nose, breathing in the spiritual energy of the surrounding heaven and earth. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth poured in from the acupoints all over his body. Inspired by his thoughts, he followed the route of the ancient wood longevity kung fu, along the meridians, and after a circle around the body, it was refined into magic power and returned to the dantian. At the same time, a mother tree of the natal immortality tree and a child tree of the natal immortality tree are also continuously refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Part of it is used to grow itself, and part of it is fed back to Ronan through the connection with Luo Nan Xuanji Yushuan and merges into Ronan's dantian. After another hour of vomiting, Ronan's eyes opened slightly, and a glimmer of light flashed through them. Breakthrough. Single quote. Ronan called out Hongmeng and called up the values. Lifespan. 223 up pointing arrow. Strength. 15 up pointing arrow. Spirit. 36 up pointing arrow. Mana. 16 up pointing arrow. Kung Fu. Ancient Wood Immortality Kung Fu 11th level 2%. Aoki Sword Technique 3rd level 1%. God Evolving Technique 5% proficiency. Talisman. Flying Sword Talisman Grandmaster 81%. Golden Armor Talisman Master 35%. Wind Chasing Talisman Master 31%. Expand. Witchcraft. Entanglement 63% Mastery. Wood Armor Proficient 2%. Healing, 6% mastery. The art of speedy growth, master 2%. Expand. Knowledge. Magic plantology, master 23%. Pharmacy, 68% proficiency. Potion. Growth green liquid, skilled 36%. Elementary transformation potion, proficiency 2%. Expand. Magic pattern. Sharp magic pattern, 5% proficiency. Armor piercing magic pattern, 3% proficiency. Spell breaking magic pattern, 6% proficiency. Paralyzing magic pattern, 2% proficiency. Realm of immortal cultivation. 7th level of chi refining. Wizard level. Level 3 wizard apprentice. Spiritual plant. The immortal tree. Year. 85. After reaching the 8th level of chi refining in the realm of immortal cultivation, the mana value increases, and the mana in the dantian is further compressed. The green mist-like mana is even more intense. Although the practice of Gumu immortality technique can benefit the body to some extent, it is not a body training technique after all and does not benefit the body much. And the reason why his spirit is far ahead of strength and spirit is because he has practiced the Yan Shen Ju. Yan Shen Ju is a spell used to separate the spirit consciousness and control multiple puppets. However, his separated spirit consciousness is not necessarily used to control puppets. On the mother tree and the child tree of his natal longevity tree, a spirit consciousness of his was left respectively. The separated spirit consciousness can also enable him to control multiple wizards' hands at the same time. In Awen's bungalow, he once summoned Hongmeng and secretly analyzed the physical values of this female druid. He found that the power of this female druid was higher than his. He knew that in the wizard world, only by tempering the body with energy particles can the physical strength be improved. Generally speaking, energy particles will be used to temper the body after being promoted to a formal wizard. Because at that time, the physical quality has been improved, and the degree of control over energy particles has been strengthened, so there will be no danger when tempering the body. In the wizard apprentice stage, although energy particles can also be used to temper the body, there is inevitably the risk of damaging the body. The druid school's transfiguration requires changing the body shape. When performing the transfiguration, energy particles will flow through the body. Perhaps at that time, Awen had already tempered her body with energy particles. The druid school is proficient in healing. Their physical injuries can be treated with healing. Ronan pondered for a while about the reason why Awen's physical strength was so strong, then he focused his mind and looked at other values. His spirit was already more than 10 points higher than Awen's. And his mana was close to Awen's. Awen was a 3rd-level wizard apprentice who was close to a formal wizard. In this case, his spirit should have reached the standard of a formal wizard, but his mana, that is, the magic power of the wizard world, was slightly insufficient. However, although his mana was small, his recovery speed was fast, because he had 2 natal immortal trees, which constantly injected mana into his dantian. Triumph City, Ronan's bungalow. Ronan condensed 20 wizard hands and refined the primary transformation potion. Condensing 20 ordinary and large wizard hands was his limit. If he wanted to, he could condensate a wizard's hand the size of a human and perform a palm technique that dropped from the sky. Elementary transformation potion, proficient 2% up pointing arrow. After several days of refining, the proficiency of the primary transformation potion has risen from proficient to proficient. This allowed him to refine the medicine faster and make the potion more effective. Although he has been in the wizarding world for several months, his mental power and magic power have reached the level of a 3rd-level wizard apprentice. But his understanding of wizard training is actually much worse than that of wizard apprentices of the same level. After all, after he was unsuccessful in the Kingdom Wizard Academy, he stayed in Triumph City and became a wild wizard apprentice. He did not go to other colleges or join any school. Now that he can enter the Kingdom Wizard Academy library to read, he will use Hongmeng to record all the books in it. In order to stay in the library longer, he planned to prepare several transformation potions that could transform him into Paul. At that time, if the effect of the medicine is about to expire, you can continue to drink it. After loading 20 bottles of primary transformation potions with only the main ingredients in the black storage ring, Ronan went out to find Paul. Aren't you going to the academy today? Ronan asked in Paul's bungalow. No, I'm going to build the witchcraft model of Hellfire at home today. What's wrong? Give me some of your hair, and your magic, Ronan said, taking out a pair of scissors and a thumb-sized obsidian from the black storage ring. Obsidian is the crystal that best carries magic power in the kingdom of Valant. It was only a thumb-sized piece. Ronan bought it and spent a lot of money. Ronan carved the magic storage pattern he saw in the library that day on it, which could temporarily lock magic power in it. Black obsidian, isn't it cheap? Paul looked at it and his eyes widened. Where did you get the money? Did you secretly sell the primary transformation potion? Of course not, and I don't want to involve the family. After Ronan reassured Paul a little, he said, Come on, help me. If you run out of money in the future, I can lend it to you at a lower interest rate than Lanny's treasury. Okay, if you meet a beautiful woman on the street and say hello to you, just leave on the pretext that you have something to do. But don't do anything that would make me feel sorry for you because of my handsome appearance. Those are all my girlfriends. Quote. As Paul spoke, he cut off a piece of hair and filled the obsidian with magic power. Ronan got the hair and magic power, asked Paul for the wizard robe and the academy badge, and left immediately. Ronan returned to the bungalow, and while chanting a spell, he divided Paul's hair and magic power into 20 parts and put them into 20 bottles of primary transformation potion. The initial purple transformation potion immediately turned into dark red. After putting all the primary transformation potions into the black storage ring, Ronan went out and walked uptown. When he was about to reach the city, he walked to an uninhabited alley and released his spiritual consciousness. After sensing that no one was approaching, he put on Paul's wizard robe and drank the primary transformation potion. Suddenly, the muscles and bones itched slightly, and his face squirmed. In just 2 seconds, he transformed into Paul. After Ronan entered the Kingdom Wizard Academy, he avoided people to avoid meeting the wizard apprentice Paul knew. After a few words, the secret was revealed. After walking for about a moment, Ronan entered the library. Then, start on the first floor and find the knowledge that interests you. I plan to record this type of knowledge using Hongmeng today. Ronan walked between the bookshelves and glanced at the books with simple covers. The paper used for books in the library is very different from the parchment outside. The quality of the paper is almost as good as his previous life. There must be wizards who improved the method of making paper. Ronan walked for a while and suddenly stopped. He saw a book, Introduction to Space Witchcraft. A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. His natal tree of immortality is constantly growing, and it is inevitable that it will become as tall as a canopy in the future. That small botanical garden must not be able to accommodate it. In this case, it can only be transplanted and planted outside the room, but this is a bit conspicuous. If it got to that point, he would have no choice but to move out of Triumph City. But that way, it would be inconvenient for him to obtain the materials. I wonder if there is a solution to space witchcraft. Single quote. Ronan thought in his mind, so he took down the Introduction to Space Witchcraft from the bookshelf and started recording. After recording all the space witchcraft books on the first floor, Ronan headed to the second floor. 3 hours later, Ronan Ben recorded on the third floor. Feeling that the initial transformation potion was about to take effect, he went downstairs, left the library, found a deserted place, and drank a bottle of the initial transformation potion. Then, walked back to the library. It was not until 5 o'clock in the afternoon that Ronan walked out of the library. Although, the college library is open late. But Paul was in the academy and had no place to live. The residences in the academy are for some top nobles, that is, disciples of top wizard families. Ordinary wizard apprentices can only live outside the academy. Because at night, Triumph City has a curfew and cannot stay in the academy, Ronan had to leave first. However, he gained a lot today. At least, he recorded all the contents of Space Witchcraft in the library. He also spent some time recording other knowledge. After leaving the library, Ronan returned to his bungalow and began to recall the relevant contents of Space Witchcraft. In the book, Introduction to Space Witchcraft, he knew that space witchcraft is mainly divided into 2 categories, space creation and space crossing. Space creation is the witchcraft of making storage magic tools and extending space. Among the witchcraft of space crossing, there are witchcraft such as teleportation, space confinement, and space exile. In the book, Anecdotes of space witchcraft. He knew that there are not many wizards who study space witchcraft. This is because the royal family restricts the spread of most of the witchcraft knowledge of space crossing. Studying space travel may open up other planes, which will bring danger to the kingdom. Therefore, most wizard apprentices can only study space-making magic. However, this kind of magic has no attack power, so not many people study it. The space magic that Ronan saw in the library was all about how to create space. The magic of traveling through space was not involved. But this is enough for me now. Ronan thought. He will use this space-making magic to expand his botanical garden. When there is a chance in the future, he will obtain the magic of space travel. Ronan saw a method of extending space in the books about space witchcraft in the library, which is to depict or carve extended magic pattern on the objects that need to be extended. Extended magic pattern is very complicated, but Ronan has Hongmong, and the number of strokes, the number of turns, the distance ratio between the patterns, are all imprinted in his mind. As long as he is focused when carving the magic pattern, the input of mana is stable enough, and he is patient enough, there will be no problem. But now, the problem he faces is that the bricks of this bungalow are not magic stones, and they can't carry magic power at all. He has to buy magic stones separately, carve extended magic patterns on the magic stones, and then embed them into the bricks of the room where the botanical garden is located. Magic stones are expensive, and it is impossible to embed magic stones in every brick. He has to use the witchcraft formation to arrange the magic stones engraved with extended magic pattern. In this way, his small botanical garden can be extended. Hongmong, start simulating the formation. Thinking of this, Ronan immediately gave Hongmong an order. He had to plan the magic formation first, and then buy the corresponding magic stones according to the formation. Ronan stood in his small botanical garden and looked around. In his eyes, there were circles of blue light, passing through the four walls of the small botanical garden. Soon, a small botanical garden of equal proportions was formed in his mind. Then, with the help of Hongmong, he continued to build the magic formation in his mind. After more than 2 hours, a stable magic formation was finally built. This wizard formation is a polyhedron with 10 vertices. The 10 vertices are distributed on the 4 walls of this room. I have to buy magic stones. Single quote. Thinking of this, Ronan began to make a primary transformation potion. He had to change his appearance and then buy magic stones. He quickly refined a primary transformation potion. He took the potion and went out, walked all the way to the lower city, found an empty corner, changed his clothes, and drank the transformation potion, turning into the appearance of buying Mu Yun magic crystal and Qingyuan copper that day. Then, he walked towards Gusen's blacksmith shop. Gusen, the owner of the blacksmith shop, has a quarter of dwarf blood. He heard from Paul that a large part of the magic stones in the blacksmith shop were actually collected by Gusen's dwarf relatives and transported secretly. Before the wizard era of the Dawn continent came, the dwarves had already lived a displaced life. Nowadays, most dwarves are scattered throughout the wizard world, making a living by treasure hunting. Only a few dwarves, relying on their dwarf casting talent, live in the cities of the kingdom, forging iron for others, and live a stable life. Ronan bought 10 pigeon egg-sized wood magic crystals at the blacksmith shop. He had used this magic crystal before, and the effect was good. Moreover, it is conducive to the carrying and conduction of wood magic. After buying the wood magic crystal, Ronan thought in his heart. If you want to embed the magic crystal into bricks and stones without leaving any traces, you need to use earth witchcraft or earth magic. And he has not learned any of them yet. So, tonight, he could only carve extended magic pattern on the wood magic crystal. Tomorrow, he would go to the library of the Kingdom Wizard Academy again to record an earth-based witchcraft. Ronan immediately used the treasure refining technique of refining the Qingling sword in the Qingmu sword technique, and chanted the spell. Suddenly, a white light lifted up one of the wood magic crystals. Ronan used his spirit and magic power to connect the Zhengjin Qi in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, forming a carving knife that was invisible to the naked eye, and carved extended magic pattern on the wood magic crystal. Time passed. Ronan carved the wood magic crystals one by one very carefully. After a sleepless night, he finally carved extended magic pattern on all 10 wood magic crystals. Ronan's mental strength is not bad now, and he didn't feel tired even if he slept one night less. At this time, the sun was rising, and Ronan put away the 10 wood magic crystals, slapped a cleansing talisman on himself, and went out. First, he had a hearty breakfast, and then walked to the lower city. When he arrived at Paul's bungalow, he asked Paul. Knowing that Paul would not go to the academy today, he told Paul that he would go to the library of the academy today, and asked Paul not to go out or answer the door. After entering the Kingdom Wizard Academy, Ronan stayed in the library until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. After all, it was quite time-consuming and troublesome to come to the academy library. Although he came this time to learn earth-based witchcraft, he also recorded other witchcraft knowledge with Hongmeng. After leaving the academy and arriving in the middle city, Ronan felt hungry, so he went to the Wild Deer Bar. He ordered 2 steaks with sauce and 2 pieces of bread as dinner, and finally drank a glass of honey wine. After eating and drinking, he returned to the bungalow and began to practice earth-based witchcraft. The witchcraft he used to embed crystals into bricks is called primary earth control, which is a medium-level witchcraft of the first level. He picked up a wood-based magic crystal with the wizard's hand and pressed it on a brick. Then, he summoned his magic power and chanted a spell. The spell echoed in the room, and ripples immediately appeared on the surface of the brick. The brick gradually softened. The wood crystal slowly sank into the brick like it was sinking into a swamp. Elementary Earth Controlling Technique 1% for beginners. Elementary Earth Controlling Technique 2% for beginners. The proficiency of the Elementary Earth Controlling Technique was rising rapidly. When he successfully integrated 2 wood crystals with extended magic patterns into the bricks and stones, his Basic Earth Controlling Technique also reached the proficient level. At this level, he could build a witchcraft model. With the experience of building witchcraft models many times and his excellent mental power, Ronan could now build a witchcraft model of the first-level medium witchcraft even without Hongmeng. But with the help of Hongmeng, the speed of building a witchcraft model was faster. He used his mind and mana to form lines in his mind very quickly and build the model. In less than half an hour, the witchcraft model of the Basic Earth Control Technique was built. Then, Ronan used his mana to inject it into the witchcraft model of the Basic Earth Control Technique and continued to cast spells. After more than an hour, Ronan only had the last wood crystal left, which needed to be integrated into the bricks and stones. Now, there are magic crystals on all 4 walls of the botanical garden, and only the last one is needed to form a witchcraft formation. When Ronan integrated the last magic crystal into the bricks and stones, suddenly, the space in front of him rippled. In just a moment, the space suddenly expanded. Ronan swept his eyes across the room. The ceiling and the 4 walls were all expanded by more than 2 meters. Ronan walked out of the room and looked in from the outside. He saw that the space inside had not changed at all. When he walked into the room again, the scene in front of him suddenly expanded and returned to the expanded space. This is the magic of extended magic pattern. Ronan sighed in his heart. Ronan looked at the ceiling that was more than 5 meters high and thought in his heart. This natal longevity tree does not need to be transplanted for the time being. It can still grow in the room for a while. The current longevity tree is from 1985, and its height has reached his nose. In the future, the natal longevity tree will inevitably grow taller and break through the ceiling, which is no surprise. After all, his natal tree of immortality was transformed by the elf tree. The elf treasure tree has a magic plant that can become the world tree. What is a world tree? Even once it truly grows, its roots and subtrees can spread all over the world. Residents of the world can see this tree no matter where they are. The world tree is like the sun to the people in this world. Not to mention the world tree, now, all wizards and knights who sneak into the elf kingdom can see a big tree exuding a holy light no matter where they are in the elf kingdom. He estimated that even if he perfected his proficiency in extending magic patterns, it would be impossible to extend this small room to the size of the Triumph City and City. Extension magic pattern can only extend space to a limited extent, but cannot create a huge space. Perhaps, in the wizarding world, there are wizards who can really create space. But he doesn't know yet. The knowledge about space magic in the library is far from the level of creating another large space. What is contained in the books only teaches readers to create a small space in the magic weapon. Using extension magic pattern to extend space is just a matter of interest. Single quote. We still have to find more powerful space magic or other methods to accommodate the growing and growing natal tree of immortality. Single quote. I wonder what secrets there are in the world of cultivating immortals. Single quote. In the past, in the world of cultivating immortals, did those who practice the ancient tree longevity technique also plant their own immortal trees outside? Single quote. Thinking of this, Ronan planned to explore the world of immortality. He immediately felt something in his heart and traveled to the woods in the world of cultivating immortals. After releasing his spiritual consciousness, he made sure that no one was nearby, so he used a stripping charm on himself. The clothes in the wizarding world immediately slid down, leaving nothing behind. He immediately put away his clothes, took out the clothes from the world of cultivating immortals, quickly put them on himself with the hands of a wizard, tied his hair into a bun, and inserted an ebony hairpin. Then, he took a picture of the wind-chasing talisman for himself and flew away in the direction of Wanjun sect's immortal domain. Ronan took the jade pendant of the ancestor of the Lu family, passed through the mist formation, and entered the fairyland of the Wanjun sect. He hadn't been here for a while, and he looked at the blue sky and green mountains that were still the immortal domain of the Gen sect, as well as the fields and shacks that stretched out under the peaks. Suddenly, I felt like I had worked in the city for a long time in my previous life and went to the countryside to relax physically and mentally. He walked into the shantytown east area and first headed towards the B-shaped square market closest to this entrance. After strolling around Yijiaofeng City, I found no spells or talismans involving space. Moreover, he found that the price of the talisman was a bit more expensive than before. Could something happen again in the world of cultivating immortals? Single quote. Ronan thought as he continued to walk around the market. After walking around for a long time, I found no spells related to space, so I left and headed towards Jiazihaofeng City. After visiting the A&C shops, Ronan still didn't see any books on space magic. Is it possible that this type of spell is too high level and cannot be sold in the shantytown's market? Single quote. Ronan guessed in his mind. In the immortal realm of the Wanjun sect, after practicing to build the foundation, you can enter the Wanjun sect and enjoy the rich spiritual energy brought by the spiritual vein spring. The chi refining and loose cultivators in Wanjun sect's immortal domain are distributed in the mansion area and shack area. Most of the shanty towns are occupied by casual cultivators below the 7th level of chi refining. After reaching the 7th level of chi refining, you can become the deacon of the immortal cultivation family in the mansion area. The former deacon of the Yu family and now the deacon of the Song family, Lin Shan, is at the 7th level of chi refining. If the monks above the 7th level of chi refining live in a shanty town, they are basically the ones who dominate the shanty town, and they belong to the type of people who have a good reputation. The talisman master he killed was a talisman master at the 7th level of chi refining. He could live in the mansion area, but he wanted to dominate in the shanty area. The residence area is mostly home to monks from the 7th to the 12th level of chi refining. Perhaps there are books on space spells in the mansion area. Single quote. Ronan thought and walked towards the mansion area. He heard other monks say in casual chat that the residence area, like the shanty area, is also divided into 4 areas: east, west, north and south. The strongest cultivating family in each mansion area manages the shanty area adjacent to it. The mansion area and the shanty area are separated by a low wall and an invisible restriction. If you don't have an identity card for the residence area, you will have to pay to enter the residence area. Ronan arrived at the gate of the low-walled city and handed over a low-grade spiritual stone as a fee for entering the city. Walking into the city, you can immediately see that although the buildings in the residence area are not much different from the normal cities in the secular world, they are very different from the shanty areas. It has spacious streets and 4 carriages can run on it at the same time. The streets are paved with bluestones and look very clean. The look and feel is incomparable to those muddy paths in shanty towns. The mansions on the street are basically all blue tiles and white walls. In comparison, the simple wooden houses in the shanty towns look even more shabby. Ronan used Hongmeng to analyze the people on the street. Through the returned values, we know that the average cultivation level of the pedestrians on the street is 3 or 4 small realms higher than that of the monks in the shanty area. Ronan found a kind-looking monk on the street who looked to be in his 40s and whose cultivation level was the 7th level of Qi refining. My fellow Taoist, I have a question to ask you. Ronan bowed. The monk looked at Ronan and said, Fellow Taoist, please tell me. Where can I buy and sell spells, magic tools, etc.? Ronan said. The monk knew that Ronan was in the mansion area for the first time. But he saw that Ronan was handsome, with heroic eyes and eyebrows, and looked very young, so he did not dare to look down on him. After all, most of the powerful monks in the return to the true sect Immortal realm came from the Shanti area. He himself also worked hard from the Shanti area. The man in front of him has an extraordinary appearance. Who knows if he will become a powerful person in the return to the true sect Immortal realm in the future. The cultivator's mind raced for a while, and he did not dare to act rashly, so he bowed and returned the greeting. This fellow Taoist is polite. I am Zheng En. There is no market in the mansion area, and the places where things are bought and sold are all shops and chambers of commerce. The shops and chambers of commerce are firmly controlled by the Shushan family, and they are quite orderly. It is not like the market in the shantytown area, where it is as simple as sending a deacon to collect protection fees. Although the things in the shops and chambers of commerce are expensive, the quality is extremely guaranteed. This fellow Taoist, since you are a newcomer, why don't we make friends and let me take you to the shops and chambers of commerce? Zheng En thought that the future road to cultivation would be long and difficult, and more friends would mean more care, so he told Ronan a lot of information. Ronan also needed someone who knew the way, and the two hit it off immediately, and walked along the street while chatting. Zheng En took Ronan to a busy street. The streets are lined with shops, just like a prosperous city in the secular world. On the street, the most eye-catching thing is a 5-story building with Zug-painted buildings, which looks quite luxurious. On the door of the tall building, there is a plaque with the words, Treasure Building, written on it. Zheng En Dao. Most of the cultivation items in the east area of the mansion are sold on this street. 30% of the shops on this street, as well as the treasure gathering building, are all products of the Song family. Before this, 50% of the shops and treasure gathering buildings here were products of the Yu family. The Yu family used to be the dominant family in the east area of the mansion, so it was inevitable that they would be tricked by other immortal cultivating families. After saying that, Zheng En said, Fellow Taoist, please take your time and take your time. I will take my leave first. If we meet again in the future, we will discuss Taoism again. When monks choose techniques and magical weapons, the less people know about them, the better, because this involves the choice of their trump cards. If your trump card is exposed, your enemy will choose techniques and magical weapons that can restrain you. Zheng En knew what was going on and left first. After saying goodbye to Zheng En, Ronan walked towards the street. As I walked, I thought to myself that although the population of this residential area is not as good as that of the Shanti area, its population density is almost the same as that of Triumph City. When he first came to the residence area, Ronan was not very familiar with the distribution of the residence area. So, he found a bookstore to see if there was a map to buy. When he walked into the bookstore, he saw a 12 or 13-year-old boy sitting at the wooden counter, wearing a melon pipe hat, holding a book and reading with relish. With a glance of Ronan's consciousness, he knew that this young man was a monk at the 2nd level of Qi refining. Logically speaking, it should be difficult for monks on the 2nd level of Qi refining to enter the residence area, so this young man should be the heir of a naturalized monk in the residence area. Perhaps, the owner of this bookstore is this boy's parents. Ronan walked to the counter and tapped it lightly with the knuckle of his index finger. After listening to this, the young man felt as if his soul was suddenly pulled out of the book. He trembled, his eyes suddenly widened, and he looked towards the counter. After seeing Ronan, he forced a smile and said, Whatever you want to buy, sir, feel free to take a look. Ronan also smiled slightly. Little brother, is there a map of the mansion area here? Yes, of course. The young man walked to a bookshelf, stood on tiptoes, took out a drawing from the bookshelf, and said, This map is not worth a low-grade spiritual stone, and we don't accept gold or silver here. Buy a book from us and get it for free. Ronan originally wanted to see what books were in the bookstore after buying the map. After hearing what the young man said, he walked towards the bookshelf and scanned it line by line. He selected a book and pulled it out. The title of the book is Chronicles of the Cultivation Sect. When you open it, you will see that it is the same as the books sold in Fangxi, a shanty town. Only the first few pages contain content, and all the following pages are blank. The first few pages provide an overview of what the book is about. This book contains what the author knows about the major sects in the world of immortality. After reading the first few pages, Ronan knew that in the world of cultivating immortals, except for the Wanjun sect and the Chengsheng sect, which he knew, there are 4 other forces, either the Immortal Cultivation Sect or the Immortal Cultivation Alliance, which, along with the Wanjun sect and the Chengsheng sect, are among the 8 great righteous paths. In addition to the righteous sect, there are also 6 major demon sects. The book says that although the righteous path is said to be the righteous path, it is actually not much more righteous. It is just that the exercises practiced by the demon sect, compared with the exercises practiced by the 8 great righteous paths, appear to be extremely evil, bloody, harmful to others and beneficial to oneself. After outlining the content of the book, the author began to write in detail from Wanjun sect. After writing less than half a page, Ronan turned to the next page and found it was blank. Ronan held the book in his hand and glanced elsewhere to see if there were any books he was interested in. On the bookshelf, there are also some story books, some books on drawing talismans, and some books on spells and exercises. Ronan took out the books on spells and exercises and looked at them. He saw that most of the spells were first level low level and first level medium, and they were not what he wanted, and the level of the exercises was not high, so he read these books one by one. Stuffed it back again. Just this one. Ronan walked to the counter with a few pages of The Chronicles of Cultivation Sects. The young man took a look at the Chronicles of the Cultivation Sect, and said, 2 low-grade spiritual stones. After all, this book is just a piece of information, so it is naturally much cheaper than a cheap book. Ronan immediately paid the spirit stone. Okay. The young man said something and walked to the back hall. After a while, he took out a book. Along with the map, he handed it to Ronan. Ronan was used to being in the shantytown market. After buying something, he had to inspect it immediately. After receiving the things handed over by the young man, he immediately opened them and checked them. He looked at the map first. The map is not detailed, but it shows the general distribution of each area. Which area is home to the residents, which area is the market, and which area is the land of romance are all marked. Ronan guessed that this place was like a triumphal city, and the map drawn too finely was a prohibited item. This is an area manager who uses detailed maps to prevent bad people from causing trouble. After just glancing at the map, Ronan used Hongmeng to write it down. Later, Ronan opened Chronicles of the Cultivation Sect. The content about Wanjun sect was very different from what he heard from Lin Shan and Li Yao. He turned quickly. Next, let's talk about the Chengsheng sect. The book says that the Chengsheng sect is adjacent to the Wanjun sect. The immortal domain of the Chengsheng sect is almost the same as that of the Wanjun sect. It relies on a spiritual vein and is divided into the sect, the residence area, and the shed area from the inside to the outside. There is also a Yuanying ancestor in the sect. In addition to the Yuanying ancestor, there are more than 10 foundation building real people. It is rumored that thousands of years ago, when the Chengsheng sect was founded, it was extremely powerful. Qing Yuanzi, the ancestor of the Chengsheng sect, practiced a method of earthly immortals and had his own spiritual realm. But at the beginning, others did not know that Qing Yuanzi practiced the method of earthly immortals. After Qing Yuanzi founded the sect, he used the Chengsheng sect's spiritual vein as a dojo to suppress one side, married 300 beautiful wives and concubines, and accepted 3,000 disciples. Later, the fact that Qing Yuanzi had his own spiritual realm was exposed, which attracted the covetousness of various immortal cultivation forces. At that time, more than a dozen immortal cultivation forces united to attack the Chengsheng sect. Qing Yuanzi risked his life to repel the dozen or so immortal cultivation forces, and before he ran out of energy, he killed most of the top cultivators of those immortal cultivation forces. His descendants and disciples survived by relying on the skills, spells, magic weapons, spiritual plants and other things he left behind. After thousands of years, although the Chengsheng sect no longer has the glory of the past, it still exists in the immortal cultivation world. In the current immortal cultivation world, among the 8 righteous ways and the 6 demon sects, it is the sect with the longest history. The book says that the Earth Immortal method remained in the Changsheng sect after Qing Yuanzi's death. However, at that time, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gradually retreated like the tide. The people of the Changsheng sect started to practice the Earth Immortal method from scratch. After 100 years, the practitioners could still open up the Earth Immortal spiritual realm. However, the spiritual energy became increasingly scarce in the future, and the spiritual realm was difficult to form a scale, which was simply incomparable to the spiritual realm of Qing Yuanzi in the past. Later on, when the spiritual energy became thin to a certain extent, those who practiced earthly immortal techniques could not even open up the spiritual realm. I wonder if the earthly immortal realm can accommodate my lifelong tree. Single quote. Ronan thought as he looked at what was written in the book. According to the book, the spiritual energy in the world of cultivation has retreated, and this earthly immortal method, because it cannot open up the earthly immortal realm, is basically a useless method. However, the wizard world is different, it has extremely rich energy particles. If this method is practiced in the wizard world, it should be able to open up the earthly immortal realm. Now this earthly immortal method should still be in the Changsheng sect, right? Single quote. Ronan's thoughts raced in his mind, thinking about how to get this earthly immortal method. The structure of the Changsheng sect is similar to that of the Wanjun sect. If you reach the foundation building, you should be able to enter the sect. First cultivate the foundation, then enter the immortal realm of the Changsheng sect, and find a way to obtain this earthly immortal method. Single quote. Now this earthly immortal method is difficult to cultivate, and it stands to reason that the Changsheng sect should not pay much attention to it. Single quote. Ronan thought as he put the map and records of cultivation sects into his storage bag and walked out. Sir, take care. There are always new books in the bookstore. Come in and have a look next time you pass by. The boy in the melon-shaped hat said goodbye to Ronan enthusiastically. When Ronan walked out of the bookstore, he looked at the treasure house again. His eyes froze slightly at first glance. He saw a familiar figure, a middle-aged man with 2 wisps of beard and a fat body. It was the steward of the Song family, Lin Shan. When Lin Shan walked out of the treasure house, he glanced at the street and saw Ronan. Lin Shan waved first, then walked forward and bowed. Dao Yu Luo, I haven't seen you for a long time. Dao Yu, are you here to buy magic items from Jubaolo? After listening to what Lin Shan said, Ronan remembered that he had seen the price of talismans rise in the market before, and he was more certain that something big was going to happen. Yes, let's see if there is anything I like. Ronan did not ask what the big thing was, but said. Dao Yu, can you please have a word with me? Lin Shan said. Ronan nodded and immediately followed Lin Shan to the less crowded side of the street. Lin Shan whispered, Dao Yu, are you going to attack the Changsheng sect too? Ronan was moved when he heard this, but he did not answer, but said, you are going to attack. Lin Shan sighed. I didn't want to attack, but this time the sect got the news that the previous ambush of the Yuanying patriarch of the Changsheng sect was not all fake. The Yuanying patriarch of the Changsheng sect is really about to die, so he pretended to be dead, just to weaken the power of the Wanjun sect before he died. This time, the Wanjun sect is determined to win, so it forced the major immortal cultivation families in the Wanjun sect's fairyland to attack the Changsheng sect. As a steward of the Lin family, I am also among the forced conscriptions. I am afraid that after I die, my wife and daughter will have no one to take care of them, so I spent most of my family wealth and bought a lot of life-saving items in the Jubao Tower. Dao Yu, if you go too, let's act together, at least there will be someone to take care of you. Ronan listened to Lin Shan's words, and his thoughts were flying. Changsheng sect has the Earth Immortal technique. When he heard that they were going to attack Changsheng sect, he also wanted to go and attack together. However, he quickly calmed down. In the fight between Wanjun sect and Changsheng sect, there are foundation building masters and Yuanying ancestors. These qi refining cultivators are all low-level combat forces. The aftermath of the battle between foundation building and Yuanying may hurt them. What's more, he didn't know whether the news that the Yuanying ancestor of Changsheng sect was about to die was another phishing. If he went, he would put himself in danger. In the fight between Wanjun sect and Changsheng sect, no matter who wins or loses, the Earth Immortal technique is still there, but I don't know who has it. Ronan thought. He felt that as long as he kept living, cultivated to foundation building, or even yuanying, and his strength improved, he would always have contact with the Earth Immortal technique one day. He really shouldn't take the risk at this time. I thought about it and decided not to go, Ronan said to Lin Shan. Lin Shan immediately looked regretful. After chatting with Ronan for a few more words, he said goodbye and left. After watching Lin Shan leave, Ronan also left the mansion area, left the Wanjun sect fairyland, and returned to the wizard world. In the wizard world, there is a monster forest 300 miles outside Kaishuan City. Ronan is practicing the 3 wood-based combat witchcrafts learned from Awen. Witchcraft. Entanglement Master 53%. Wood Armor Master 12%. Healing Master 16%. Expand. He has mastered all 3 witchcrafts to the master level. He used the ancient wood longevity magic power and poured it into the witchcraft model of the wood armor. Suddenly, a layer of wood armor condensed all over his body. The wood armor was brown with some green buds, thick and tough. With a thought in his mind, the wood armor on the back of his hand extended a sharp thorn like a sword. With a casual wave of his hand, he cut off the trunk of a tree that was so big that a person could hug it, and it fell to the side. Entanglement. Ronan poured his magic power into the witchcraft model. Suddenly, 5 vines shot out from the back of his hand covered with wooden armor and continued to grow. With the cooperation of the master-level entanglement technique and the master-level wooden armor technique, the vines can not only break through the ground, but also be released from the wooden armor. The vines extended rapidly in the air and wrapped around a tree in the blink of an eye. Ronan just pulled lightly, and the tree was broken. Under his control, 5 vines entangled the broken tree trunks, swinging back and forth in the forest, making a whistling sound. Suddenly, Ronan's eyes flashed. His consciousness sensed that there was a huge monster approaching this side. This is the Warcraft forest, and it is not surprising that there are Warcraft. Ronan still maintained the wood armor technique, and used the entanglement technique to carry the tree trunk and ran towards the huge monster. After running for a while, he saw a snake-like creature with a height of 2 people, soaring in the forest. This snake-like creature was dark green all over, with 3 red eyes on its head. 3-eyed anaconda, a first-class Warcraft. Single quote. Ronan had read the Warcraft illustrations in the library and had seen this Warcraft. This Warcraft, whether it is eyes, snake scales, sharp teeth or blood, can be used as witchcraft materials all over its body. Ronan wanted to use this Warcraft to try his wood-based combat witchcraft. He swung his hand, and the tree trunk entangled by the vines cut through the air, and then whistled towards the 3-eyed anaconda. Snap! The 3-eyed anaconda swung its tail and smashed the tree trunk to pieces, and a ball of wood chips exploded in the air. Ronan used his magic power, and more than 10 vines flew out from the wooden armor on the back of his hand and entangled the 3-eyed anaconda. The 3-eyed anaconda kept swung its tail, but could only slightly open a few vines, but could not break them. The next moment, the remaining vines tightly entangled the 3-eyed anaconda. The 3-eyed anaconda swung its body violently and struggled endlessly, but could not break free at all. Ronan kicked his feet and controlled the vines to shrink continuously. With the power of the vines, the whole person quickly rushed towards the anaconda. When he was about to reach the body of the anaconda, the spikes on the wooden armor on the back of his hand suddenly became longer. Then, he kicked his foot again, jumped high, and leapt towards the anaconda. When he was about to reach it, he thrust his sharp spike down. The spike pierced through the hard scales of the 3-eyed anaconda, pierced into its body, and then came out from the other side. The body of the 3-eyed anaconda was pierced by Ronan, and it screamed and hissed, with a sharp and piercing sound. Emerald green blood spurted out from the wound of the 3-eyed anaconda. All of it splashed on Ronan's wooden armor. Ronan exerted a little force with his right hand and pulled the spikes of the wooden armor down. The wound of the 3-eyed anaconda suddenly became bigger, and the emerald green blood splashed out, and the anaconda's internal organs followed. Ronan's heart moved, and the spikes of the wooden armor immediately turned into a brown mist and dissipated. He picked up the internal organs that were emitting hot steam, stuffed them back into his body, and then cast a healing spell on this hideous and huge wound. The verdant ancient wood's longevity magic power was used by him and injected into the witchcraft model of healing spell. Suddenly, a little green light gathered around the wound of the anaconda, and soon, it gathered into a ball. After just a few seconds, the anaconda's blood, which was gushing like a spring, almost stopped, with only a little blood seeping out. Ronan cast a spell while closing the anaconda's wound. The wounds on both sides were combined together, and under the wrapping of green light, they gradually re-adhered and healed slowly. The three-eyed anaconda was in agony and panicked. Seeing this human healing itself, it couldn't help but fall into doubt. It gradually stopped screaming and struggling, opened its 3 scarlet snake eyes, and looked at Ronan steadily. After Ronan healed the wound on one side of the three-eyed anaconda, he also healed the wound on the other side with healing magic. After about 10 minutes, the wound on the other side of the anaconda was also completely healed. Ronan used his spiritual sense to scan again and found that the anaconda's internal organs were damaged because of his previous attack. So, he cast a healing spell, and the magic power penetrated into the anaconda's body. Under the magic of healing, the damaged parts of the three-eyed anaconda's internal organs were slowly recovering. At this time, the three-eyed anaconda was increasingly confused about what the two-legged beast in front of him was going to do. Ronan's consciousness swept over and saw that the three-eyed anaconda was unharmed, so he summoned Hongmeng to analyze the three-eyed anaconda's numerical value. The numerical value is not much different from before I injured it. Single quote. This difference should be due to blood loss. Single quote. This is the power of master-level healing. Single quote. Earlier, he caused the same wound to a tiger in the forest of the Shushan world. It was impossible to treat it with entry-level healing techniques. At that time, he could only sigh, peel the tiger skin, go to the capital of Wei, exchange some silver, and have a big meal. But I don't know where the limit of master-level healing is. Single quote. Ronan stood still and thought to himself. The three-eyed anaconda saw the two-legged beast in front of him fall into deep thought and was defenseless, and his 3 scarlet eyes suddenly shone brightly. It opened its bloody mouth very quickly, saliva splashed everywhere, and the scarlet snake tongue shot out like an arrow, rolling towards Ronan. Ronan just raised his right hand slightly, and his spirit connected with the Qingling sword in his dantian. Suddenly, a long green rainbow rushed up and cut off the entire snake head of the three-eyed anaconda. Ronan waved his hand again, and the Qingling sword turned into a tiny green light and was stored in his dantian. The huge snake head of the three-eyed anaconda rolled on the ground for several times before stopping. The scarlet snake tongue was still outside the snake mouth and could not be retracted. The 3 snake eyes seemed to still have spirit, looking at Ronan. The snake body still had life and was shaking constantly. Ronan walked forward, lifted the snake head of the three-eyed anaconda, and put it back on the snake body. He summoned Hongmeng and aimed the position of the snake head at the cut surface of the snake body. Then, in the witchcraft model of healing, the ancient wood longevity magic power was injected. A little bit of green light appeared on the snake head and the cut surface, gradually gathering into a ball, healing the wound. Time passed little by little. Ronan's Hongmeng had been analyzing the three-eyed anaconda, constantly giving him feedback on the vital signs of the monster. He used all his strength to perform the healing technique, but the vital signs were still declining at a relatively fast rate. It can't be saved. Single quote. Ronan said in his heart, and stopped releasing the healing technique. Then, he dug out the eyes of the three-eyed anaconda, pulled out the sharp teeth, peeled off the snake skin, collected the blood, and let out the essence. As for the poison sac, he had to give up because he didn't have a corresponding container. Ronan quickly collected all the monster materials. Although he couldn't use the monster materials for the time being, he had a lot of storage space, so he collected them first. After all, the price of these monster materials would not be very high. The black market for buying and selling monster materials usually buys monster materials at a low price and then sells them at a high price. Selling Warcraft materials privately is against the laws of the kingdom. The difference in price is the high profit that the black market sellers get at the risk of being discovered. Kingdom Wizard Academy, Library. Moonlight and starlight are cast above the starry sky of the library. Ronan, who drank the transformation potion, flipped through the books under the light of the stars and the moon. Hongmeng in his mind recorded the contents of the books. These days, Ronan can be said to be like a sponge, absorbing all kinds of knowledge in the wizard system. He roughly understood the wizard system and knew that in the wizard system, the general division of wizard cultivation is divided into 3 systems: element system, blood system, and mysterious system. The element system is the wizard who mainly studies the 5 elements of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. This type of wizard accounts for the largest proportion in the kingdom. The blood system uses the blood of magic beasts to change itself, thereby obtaining a strong body and the ability of magic beasts. This kind of wizard, in the kingdom, usually works on the transformation of the knight's body. The famous blood wizard Sophie Oren is this kind of wizard. However, because the experiments he conducted were too inhumane, and the transformed objects were powerful and threatened the safety of the kingdom, he was not tolerated by the royal family. The mysterious department is a wizard who studies fate and practices divination, astrology and other arts. This kind of wizard is also called prophet. But there are not many such wizards, because if you concentrate on studying the knowledge of the mysterious department, you often have no combat power. However, the royal family will hire prophets as consultants to predict for them. However, the prophets can only capture a little fragment of fate and cannot see the overall situation. Therefore, their predictions are always sometimes accurate and sometimes inaccurate. In addition to these 3 departments, there are also alchemy departments, spiritual departments, life departments, necromancy departments, etc. Ronan sighed at the vastness and complexity of wizard knowledge while recording a book. After recording, he put it back and took out another book and opened it. When he turned to this book, his eyes suddenly lit up. This book recorded not the knowledge of the 3 wizard systems, but the knowledge called magnetic field system. The witchcraft cultivated by studying the magnetic field system is called magnetic field witchcraft. The reason why Ronan was interested was that he saw one of the functions of magnetic field witchcraft. It can allow practitioners to release magnetic field force, and then float up and achieve flight. Chapter 71. After seeing the book on magnetic field witchcraft, Ronan immediately read it layer by layer. He memorized all the knowledge of magnetic field witchcraft that a second-class witchcraft apprentice could learn in the library. There are only 2 witchcrafts recorded in the knowledge book on magnetic field witchcraft. However, if you want to perform these 2 magnetic field witchcrafts, you need to learn a lot of knowledge about magnetic fields and magnetic forces. Most of the books on magnetic field witchcraft in the library are about magnetic fields and magnetic forces. These 2 witchcrafts are both first-level superior. One witchcraft is called magnetic torrent. After performing this witchcraft, the magic power can be converted into a magnetic torrent, flowing in the flesh, and then the magnetic force can be released to form a magnetic field. The external magnetic force can be manipulated by the wizard, and it can repel the Earth's magnetic force to achieve air gliding. In addition, after mastering this witchcraft, the external magnetic force can also be used to manipulate weapons. The apprentice of the magnetic field wizard, just by studying this magic, can fight and escape, and has already had a good fighting power. The other one is primary magnetic field rotation. This magic is a magic to strengthen the body. After performing this magic, the life magnetic field can be temporarily stimulated to increase the physical strength. However, if this magic is overused, it will cause damage to the body. After Ronan recorded the knowledge of magnetic field magic, he couldn't wait to try it. So, he left the library, left the academy, and returned to the small bungalow in the middle city. He moved his mind and traveled to the woods of the world of cultivation. After changing into the clothes of the world of cultivation, he began to practice the 2 kinds of magic. Although, before practicing these 2 kinds of magic, you have to learn the knowledge of magnetic field and magnetic force in the library. But he wanted to learn while practicing with the help of Hongmeng. Ronan first practiced magnetic torrent. He recited the spell according to the witchcraft book. As obscure syllables came out of his mouth, a small part of the ancient wood longevity magic power in his body turned into a magnetic flow, which quickly flowed around his body. Magnetism and magnetic field can be controlled by his mind. At this time, as soon as the magnetic flow came out, he felt that his body was much heavier. It seemed that a huge gravity was imposed on him. Ronan immediately knew that it was the magnetic force of the magnetic flow that attracted the Earth's magnetic force. So, he thought about it and reversed the magnetic force. Suddenly, the magnetic force of the magnetic flow repelled the Earth's magnetic force. The whole person floated up. He floated up slowly, and stopped when he was about 3 meters high. He was still chanting the spell. Magnetic Torrent Beginner 10%, Magnetic Torrent Beginner 11%. As the proficiency of Magnetic Torrent continued to increase, the magnetic flow he could transform became larger and larger. The height of the rise was also gradually increasing. Until he rose to 10 meters, Ronan tried to manipulate the magnetic force and glide in the air. He thought about it and began to reverse the direction of the magnetic force. Swish! He only slightly reversed the direction, and the whole person crashed into the ground like an arrow. He immediately had an idea and cast the wood armor technique. A layer of tough brown wood armor immediately wrapped his whole body. Bang! Ronan hit the ground like a boulder falling from the sky, stirring up a cloud of dust. He supported himself with both hands and climbed up from the ground. Then he had an idea and released the wood armor technique, and the wood armor on his body turned into brown smoke and dissipated. Fortunately, I have the wood armor technique, so I won't get hurt, and I won't be covered in dust. Single quote. Magnetic force is really hard to control. Single quote. Ronan thought in his heart, reviewed the failure process just now, and after having a plan in his mind, he recited the spell of Magnetic Torrent again and took off again. 2 hours later, Magnetic Torrent Proficiency 65% up pointing arrow. After reaching the proficiency level, he successfully built a witchcraft model of Magnetic Torrent in his mind. No need to chant a spell, just a thought in his mind, he can float in the air. At this time, magnetic force flows in his body, and the magnetic field is released. The whole person is slowly gliding at a height of 10 meters. Some shorter trees slowly move under him. It's done. Single quote. Ronan was slightly happy. After 2 hours of training, he can finally fly smoothly in the air without falling to the ground. Try to speed up. Single quote. Ronan immediately used his mind to mobilize the magnetic force. Swish! Suddenly, he flew through the air like an arrow. However, his flying direction was crooked again, and he still fell down. Seeing that he was about to hit a tree, Ronan immediately moved in his mind and changed the direction of the magnetic force. Swish! The direction suddenly reversed, and the whole person shot backwards in the direction of his feet. Ronan controlled the magnetic force again. However, the speed increased, and the difficulty of magnetic control increased. After he shuttled back and forth in the air several times, he finally fell diagonally again, and there was another big tree in front of him. He immediately stopped the magnetic torrent and performed the wood armor technique. Bang! He crashed into the big tree. The big tree broke immediately where he hit it. The treetops fell down with a loud bang, and the fallen leaves passed through the air, making a rustling sound. Ronan fell to the ground. Bang! He fell to the ground with his feet facing down. The mud and dust under his feet suddenly splashed high. Because of the protection of the wooden armor, he fell from a high altitude without getting hurt. After practicing for a night, Ronan was finally able to glide quickly in the sky. He cast the magnetic torrent, circled in the air for a few times, and then landed gracefully. Magnetic Torrent Mastery 62%. After practicing for a night, the magnetic torrent was also mastered. Take a break, go have breakfast first. Single quote. Ronan thought of the silver money left in his storage bag from selling tiger skins, so he cast the magnetic torrent again and glided out of the woods. After having breakfast, Ronan returned to the woods where he practiced the magnetic torrent. He practiced flying with magnetism, but he had not practiced controlling objects with magnetism. He immediately used the ancient wood longevity magic power and injected it into the witchcraft model of the magnetic torrent. Suddenly, a magnetic force rushed through his body. He moved his mind and applied the magnetism to a fist-sized stone. Swish! The stone flew out immediately and shot diagonally upward. Bang! The stone hit a tree trunk, stirring up wood chips and embedding them. Using magnetism to control objects is also a good means of attack. Single quote. Thinking of this, Ronan took out the elven dagger he bought in Diagon Alley a few months ago from the Black Ring of Storage. he manipulated the magnetism and went towards the elven dagger. The elven dagger immediately rose slowly and circled around him with his manipulation of magnetism. Then, he had an idea and pushed the elven dagger hard with magnetism. Immediately, the elven dagger shot out and drew a silver light in the air. With a thud, it was inserted into a tree trunk, all the way to the handle. Early in the morning, Ronan got up from the bed, opened the quilt, got out of bed, put on a pair of straw sandals, and walked towards his botanical garden. After entering the botanical garden, the scene in front of him expanded, and a room with an area of about 60 square meters appeared in front of him. In the room, the plants were lush. Ronan had planned to go to the library of the Kingdom Wizard Academy again today to record wizard knowledge. But after talking about this with Paul last night, Paul became a little emotional. Paul had already completed the witchcraft model of Burning Hell Flame 2 days ago. After building the witchcraft model, Paul was happy and wanted to go out and indulge himself. After all, he was born active, and he was really bored after being secluded for many days. But 2 days ago, he heard that Ronan was going to the library, and he was afraid that the matter of the transformation potion would be exposed, so he could only stay at home obediently. After enduring for 2 days, he was almost crazy. Ronan didn't want to change himself into Paul's appearance and go out, and Paul couldn't help going out, causing both of them to be exposed, so he had to let Paul go out. Ronan put away his thoughts and cast his eyes on the mother tree of the natal immortal tree. The mother tree is now more than 2 meters tall. The branches and leaves are becoming more and more luxuriant, and its crown has the potential to suppress other spiritual plants. Ronan injected the ancient wood immortality magic power into the witchcraft model of speed growth technique. A thick green light column fell on the mother tree of the natal immortal tree. The walls of the botanical garden and his face were all reflected with a layer of green light. Under the magic of speed growth technique, Ronan felt that the mother tree of the natal immortal tree was full of vitality. He called up Hongmeng and analyzed the immortal tree. Spiritual plant. Natal immortal tree. Year. 94 up pointing arrow. It's almost 100 years. Single quote. Ronan was excited when he saw this year. Once the 100 years are up, the greenwood spirit body will be formed. Ronan poured the ancient wood immortality magic power into the witchcraft model and used the speed growth technique with all his strength. The ancient wood longevity mana in the Dantian was continuously transformed into the magic of fast growth technique and acted on the mother tree of the natal longevity tree. After half an hour, Ronan's mana was completely exhausted. With the feedback from himself and the 2 natal longevity trees, the mana in the Dantian was restored at a very fast speed. Taking advantage of the time when the mana was restored, Ronan left the botanical garden and refined the growth green liquid. Growth green liquid mastery 12% up pointing arrow. Ronan refined several portions of growth green liquid, took it with the wizard's hand, and went to the botanical garden. He first poured 1 portion of the growth green liquid on the mother tree of the natal longevity tree. The feeling of vitality in the mother tree emerged in his heart again. Then, he poured another portion of the growth green liquid on the child tree of the natal longevity tree. While pouring, he called up Hongmeng and analyzed the tree. A fine blue light passed over the child tree. Then, a stream of information emerged in his mind. Spiritual plant. Lifelong tree. Year. 16 up pointing arrow. This sapling is now just a small tree that is not even knee-high. It refines the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and feeds back part of it to Ronan. But I don't know when there will be another tree species. Single quote. Ronan thought in his heart. What if his lifelong tree sapling became a large forest? The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was absorbed by this large forest, like a torrent, and after being refined, it flowed into his Dantian. What a spectacular scene it would be at that time. After pouring out another portion of the growth green liquid, Ronan went down to the cellar where the Qingling Qian bamboo was planted. After going down to the cellar, the space in front of him expanded again. Originally, the cellar was narrow, and he used extended magic pattern to expand the space of the cellar. After all, the Qingling Qian bamboo grew taller and taller, and he couldn't keep digging the cellar deeper. In front of him, there were a total of 7 Qingling Qian bamboos. The extra part was a small section of other Qingling bamboo that he cut off and buried in the soil, using the fast growth technique to make it take root. He watered the growth green liquid while calling up Hongmeng for analysis. Suddenly, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. Spiritual plant, Qingling bamboo. Age, 1000 up pointing arrow. Finally, there is a Qingling bamboo that is 1000 years old. In this way, he can have an extra Qingling sword made from the 1000-year-old Qingling bamboo. The other Qingling bamboos planted at the same time are also nearly 1000 years old. He plans to let the other Qingling bamboos continue to grow, and when a bamboo grows to 2000 years old, he will use it to refine the Qingling sword. To refine the Qingling sword, metals need to be collected as reinforcement materials. So, he left this Qingling bamboo alone and continued to cultivate it, and cut it when he needed to refine the Qingling sword. After Ronan finished watering the growth green liquid, he left the cellar. He manipulated the wizard's hand and put the bottle of green liquid back on the experimental table. At this time, his magic power was almost restored, so he used the fast growth technique on the mother tree of the natal immortal tree. At the same time, he analyzed it with Hongmeng. After a while, the age of the natal immortal tree reached 95. At this moment, a strange feeling suddenly arose in his body. At the same time, the natal immortal tree, which was originally ordinary, actually emitted a faint golden light. This golden light spread faintly and shone on his body. He immediately felt that his strength, spirit and magic power had improved. He thought of the light of the elf treasure tree. However, the light of the elf treasure tree is pure white and faintly glittering with 7 colors. And his natal immortal tree emits a light golden glow. The book records that elves who bathe in the glow of the elf treasure tree will be enhanced. The natal immortal tree, which was refined by the elf treasure tree, showed this characteristic of the elf treasure tree after reaching 95 years. Ronan immediately called up Hongmeng and analyzed his own status. Suddenly, streams of information emerged in his mind. You have been blessed by the light of the holy tree. Status effect. 1. Under the glow, strength, spirit, and mana are enhanced, increase ratio, 3%. 2. Bathed in the glow, strength, spirit, and mana slowly and permanently increase. You have been blessed by the heart of nature. Current status, plant affinity. Status effect. When next to a plant, strength, spirit, and mana are increased, the increase ratio is determined by the quality and number of plants. Amplification ratio, 12%. Amplification range, 30 meters. Now, he has 2 states. After looking at the status, Ronan looked at the natal immortal tree that was emitting a light golden light. Although there are many glowing trees among the magic plants in the wizard world, but he still felt that this light golden light made this originally ordinary natal immortal tree conspicuous. I wonder if the light can be concealed. Single quote. Thinking about it, Ronan sank his spirit into the mother tree of the natal immortal tree. After Ronan's spirit sank into the tree of immortality, he tried to use his spirit to converge the light golden light. The tree of immortality is his appendage, and it is considered a part of his body. In theory, he should be able to control the tree of immortality. Soon, Ronan found the trick to control the tree of immortality. Immediately, his mind moved. The light golden light on the tree of immortality was converged. The tree of immortality returned to its ordinary appearance. Except for its luxuriant branches and leaves, it is not much different from the trees in the forest. In the future, when I am next to the tree of immortality, I will release the light of the holy tree. Single quote. When I leave the bungalow, I will converge the light of the holy tree. Single quote. Ronan thought, and his mind moved. The ordinary tree of immortality, every branch and every leaf, once again lit up with a light golden light. Ronan was blessed by the light of the holy tree again. He continued to use the fast growth technique on his natal longevity tree. When his mana was about to run out, he sat cross-legged on the ground and practiced the ancient wood longevity technique. 10 days later, in the botanical garden, the natal longevity tree was emitting a light golden light. Ronan sat cross-legged under his natal longevity tree and practiced. He made a sword gesture, and 2 green rays suddenly appeared in front of him. The next moment, the green rays disappeared, revealing 2 Qingling swords. After cultivating the 1000-year-old Qingling bamboo, Ronan bought the Wudyan magic crystal and Qingyuan copper the next day. Then, he cut down the 1,000-year-old Qingling Qian bamboo and sacrificed it to refine another Qingling sword. In the next 10 days, he often practiced the Qingmu sword technique. He breathed slowly, and operated the mysterious skills according to the Qingmu sword technique. The ancient wood longevity magic power, rising from the Dantian, first followed the Qingmu sword art's route of exercise, circulated in the body, and then injected into the two Qingling swords. Then, under his control, the magic power circulated in the two Qingling swords and returned to his body. In this way, the ancient wood longevity magic power circulated between his body and the two swords. His feeling with the two swords gradually deepened. He called up Hongmeng and called up the progress of the exercise. Qingmu sword art, 5th level 99%. It's almost a breakthrough. Single quote. If you break through to the 6th level, you can master the sword move, sword shadow splitting. Ronan immediately collected his mind and continued to practice. Perhaps it was because the Qingmu sword art was a wood-attributed sword art. With the blessing of Heart of Nature and Light of the Holy Tree, the speed of practicing the Qingmu sword art was faster than he expected. About a moment later, Ronan's clothes suddenly fluttered. Two Qingling swords flashed green light. Breakthrough. Single quote. Ronan called up Hongmeng and checked the progress of cultivation. Qingmu sword technique, 6th level 1% up pointing arrow. He followed the Qingmu sword technique, operated the ancient wood longevity technique, and made another sword technique. Suddenly, one of the Qingling swords flashed with light, and two sword shadows with shining green light were separated. He used his magic power and his mind moved again. The other Qingling sword also separated two sword shadows. At this time, there were 6 swords hanging in front of him. The compelling sword energy emanated from the 6 swords. Ronan used his spirit, and the 6 swords circled around him like swimming fish. His mind moved, and the 2 main swords flew back and were caught in his hands. Then, his figure disappeared, and he traveled to the world of cultivation with the 2 Qingling swords. Ronan's figure appeared in a forest in the world of cultivation. After appearing, he immediately threw the 2 main swords in his hands. The 2 Qingling swords turned into 2 green rays, like a swimming dragon, flying towards the sky. Ronan pinched a sword formula and performed sword shadow splitting. The 2 Qingling swords immediately split into sword shadows. Then, under his control, the 6 swords were lined up in a row, like a line, flying towards a mountain. It was quite mentally exhausting to manipulate 6 swords at the same time. Fortunately, he practiced the Shen Yan Ju, and his mental power was strong, which could withstand such consumption. If it were other Qi refining level 8 cultivators, it would be unlikely to manipulate 6 magic weapons at the same time. The 6 swords were arranged together, emitting a strong sword energy. After it pierced the mountain peak, it immediately made a loud bang. It was the sword energy that broke the rocks. A huge gap appeared on the mountain peak. Huge pieces of rubble fell from the gap and rolled on the hillside, making a rumbling sound. Ronan waved his hand, and the 6 swords flew back, turning into 6 green rays that sank into his wrists, and then entered the meridians and went straight to his dantian. Then, the 6 green rays merged into 2. After the light faded, there were 2 green swords hanging in his dantian, nourished by the misty ancient wood longevity magic. After Ronan returned to the wizard world, he went to Paul's residence and found Paul. He knew that Paul stayed at home for the next few days and practiced meditation. The next day, he drank the transformation potion, turned into Paul's appearance, and entered the Kingdom Wizard Academy. After entering the library, Ronan was calling up Hongmeng and recording the contents of the book, but he found that a blonde man of 18 or 19 years old was walking towards him. Ronan put the book back on the bookshelf and was about to leave. This person should know Paul, and he didn't want to contact this person, so as not to be exposed. But he never thought that this man seemed to have something urgent to tell Paul. He walked over quickly, called out in a low voice, and then said, "Paul, have you heard that someone found a legendary wizard's wizard ruins overseas? Should we go and explore?" Ronan pretended to think about it, then said, "I'll think about it," and said goodbye and left. "Paul, are you still considering it?" After hearing Ronan's words, the blonde man said, "Didn't you always say that you wanted to break through to the 3rd level wizard apprentice as soon as possible?" The legendary wizard's ruins must have a lot of treasures. Maybe there are potions or potion formulas left by the wizard. After all, this is a legendary wizard, and his worst relics can also be of great help to us. Let's go together, and call a few more people to go together, so that we can take care of each other. I still need to think about it, Ronan said, and walked to the other side, took out a book and read it by himself. Paul, I didn't expect you to be so cowardly. The blonde man looked at Ronan like this, and didn't want to make himself look bad. He left after saying this. From that day on, Ronan kept recording knowledge in the library. No one spoke to him until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. He left the Kingdom Wizard Academy and walked on the streets of Triumph City. When passing by the market, he seemed to be oblivious to the shouting on the street. As he walked, he thought in his heart, should I tell Paul about this news? If it were him, he would never explore. If his wizard level was high enough, he could still go and explore. Now both Paul and the blonde man are just wizard apprentices. When they get there, I'm afraid that the aftermath of the formal wizard battle can hurt them. The probability of death is greater than that of getting treasure. The reason why Ronan didn't want to tell Paul about this was that he didn't want Paul to go and die. After all, resources are attractive, especially for wizards. On the path of wizard cultivation, as long as more resources are obtained, it is possible to go further, and then have a longer life and more powerful power. If Paul heard this news, he would inevitably be tempted by the temporary benefits and follow the team to the wizard ruins. But Ronan thought that if Paul met the blonde man again in the future, he would be suspicious if he didn't know anything. So, he still had to tell Paul this news. Paul's bungalow in the lower city of Kaishuan City. Ronan relayed the words of the blonde man to Paul. When Paul heard this, his eyes immediately widened, his brows frowned, and he seemed to be struggling in his heart. Obviously, Paul's heart was moved. The ruins of the legendary wizard, even if they could stroll around the periphery, if they were lucky enough to get the remains of the legendary wizard, it would be of great help to them. Paul sat on the chair, his hands were sweating, holding the handle of the chair, tightening and loosening. Why, have you decided? Ronan sat at the dining table, holding a copper goblet in his hand, shaking it, and staring at the deep purple wine in it, while asking. Paul closed his eyes, frowned more tightly, and there were beads of sweat on the tip of his nose. He struggled for a while again, then exhaled and said, I won't go. Ronan was a little curious, why? Paul gave him the impression of a person obsessed with power. There is a high probability that he will explore the ruins with others. I am the only one in the Wilson family in this generation. Paul sighed. Ronan only knew that Paul was a poor nobleman before, but he didn't know what his family was like. After Paul said this, Ronan chatted with Paul about this matter. Only then did he know that Paul's parents were living in a small town in Zhongnan province. Paul's father was a second-level wizard apprentice. Soon after Paul was born, something happened to the Wilson family. His father's wizard training also went wrong. He was injured by energy particles and could no longer practice wizardry. Paul's wizard aptitude was discovered by his father, so he gave Paul some money and asked him to follow the caravan to Triumph City to see if he could enter the best wizard academy in the kingdom. Later, Paul really got his wish. Since the news of the legendary wizard spread, ships set sail at the dock outside Triumph City. Many wizards in Triumph City, whether wizard apprentices or formal wizards, went overseas in large numbers. They hoped that they could get the magic tools, potions, manuscripts or other things left by the legendary wizard. Ronan walked into the Kingdom Wizard Academy with Paul's face and found that the aisles of the academy were much emptier than before. After listening to the conversations of some passing wizard apprentices, he knew that some wizard apprentices followed their mentors to the ruins. Some wizard apprentices followed their family wizards to explore the ruins. Wizard apprentices are at the bottom of the wizard world and are weak. If they go alone, it is extremely dangerous. But as long as there is a formal wizard to lead them, the safety will be much increased. Ronan stepped onto a path paved with white gravel, passed by several apple trees, walked past a hot spring with exquisite statues, and came to the door of the library. After entering the library, he continued to record witchcraft knowledge. It took another 2 days for Ronan to finally record all the knowledge that a second-level wizard apprentice in the library could obtain with Hongmong. As long as he summoned Hongmong, he could check every paragraph in every book in his mind. There is also wood witchcraft knowledge in the library. However, it is not exactly the same as what Awen taught him. After all, in the kingdom, the Druid school is not the only one that studies wood witchcraft. The reason why each school is different is that they have different understandings of the same knowledge. Ronan also learned the wood knowledge in the library books, which complemented what Awen taught. The books in the library recorded 3 wood magics. 2 first-level medium magics. One is fatal poison powder, which can release flowers and spray poison powder. One is paralysis tree seed, which can release a group of seeds in the air. As long as the enemy touches the seeds, they will be paralyzed. One first-level superior magic, light recovery. As long as this magic is performed under the sun, it can heal wounds and restore physical strength and spirit. This magic, like the healing technique, has its own advantages and disadvantages. Healing technique can be performed on yourself and others, but it only has the effect of healing. And light recovery can only be used by yourself, and there is a limitation of sunlight. But it can heal wounds, restore physical strength and spirit at the same time. After Ronan recorded the knowledge in the library, he stayed in the bungalow for several days to digest this knowledge. That day, he was practicing paralysis tree seed in the room. He chanted a spell, waved his hand, and tree seeds appeared in the air and floated forward. Suddenly, his spiritual sense sensed someone approaching the bungalow, so he retracted his hand. All the tree seeds in the air disappeared instantly. Ronan's spiritual sense detected that someone was coming outside, driving a donkey cart. There were wooden boxes and linen bags on the donkey cart. Ronan knew immediately that it was his family who had replied to his letter. After moving to the bungalow, he sent a letter to his family, saying that he had moved to a new address. Calculating the time, it should be time for the reply letter to arrive in Triumph City. Knock knock knock. After a while, there was a knock on the door of the bungalow. Ronan left the botanical garden and closed the door of the room. Then, he opened the front door of the bungalow and saw a strong man. After bowing to him, he said, "Dear sir, your letter has arrived." Then, he took out 2 letters from the linen bag. Then, he moved a wooden box down from the donkey cart with great effort. After the messenger left, Ronan pulled the wooden box into the bungalow. He just used his spiritual sense to scan it and knew that there were more than 200 valiant gold coins in the wooden box. Because he had money, he only mentioned the relocation in his letter home, but did not ask for money. However, his noble father still sent the gold coins. Ronan retracted his consciousness and looked at the 2 letters in his hand. Both letters were sealed with red wax and printed with the family crest. One letter came from his father's territory, the Redwood Territory in the Southeast Province. The other letter came from his eldest brother, Leon Lawrence, who was currently fighting the Orc Empire at the northern border. Ronan sat down at the table and poured himself a glass of wine. Then, he opened the letter sent from the family and read it. After reading the letter sent by his father, Ronan was sure that the more than 200 gold coins were funded by his father. The letter also talked about what happened in the family recently. The first thing was that there was an insect infestation in the Redwood Territory. One of the sources of income for the Redwood Territory occupied by his family was to sell the redwood planted in the Redwood Territory to all parts of the kingdom. When an insect infestation occurred, the redwood was eaten by insects, and the losses would become greater and greater. His father was afraid of too much loss, so after weighing the pros and cons, he spent a lot of money to invite a second-level wizard apprentice who practiced wood witchcraft. This second-level wizard apprentice summoned several wood element guardian spirits in their family's redwood forest to protect the trees from pests. In this way, the losses in their redwood territory were curbed. The second thing was that his younger brother, now 14 years old, had been promoted to Silver Knight. After being promoted to Silver Knight, he was not far from Gold Knight. After reaching the peak of the Golden Knight, if the knight wants to improve, he must first transform his body and then wear enchanted equipment. His brother found a wizard apprentice and tried to practice meditation. He found that he did not have any wizard talent and could not transform himself through wizard means. In the future, he will have to ask others for help to transform his body. So his brother wanted to learn about the witchcraft of transforming the body in advance through family letters. Ronan himself did not approve of his brother's body transformation. There are two methods of body transformation that he knows now. One is blood implantation, implanting various magic beast blood into the knight to increase the knight's muscle strength and reaction speed. This method may not only be life-threatening, but sometimes it will also make the transformer lose its nature. The other is energy particle amplification. That is, using energy particles to temper the body to achieve the purpose of enhancing the strength of the body. This method is also dangerous. If the wizard operates himself, the danger is relatively small. Because operating himself, he can feel whether his body can withstand energy particles and can adjust at any time. But if you operate on other people, you don't know how they feel. When they feel uncomfortable, it's too late to adjust. At this time, the energy particles have already caused damage to the body. If you use a small amount of energy particles to temper the body, the tempering effect cannot be achieved. Only some wizards with strong spirits, keen perception, and rich experience can use this method to temper the body of others. Ronan heard from Paul that most of the knights serving in the kingdom now still use blood implantation to enhance muscle strength. Because this method is the most convenient and effective, and the kingdom has a blood implantation method that has been tested many times and is not very dangerous. The knights can generally strengthen their bodies and will not die. Ronan couldn't think of how to reply to his brother for a while, so he gave up and opened his eldest brother's letter. After reading it once, Ronan knew that the war between the Kingdom of Valant and the Orc Empire was now in a state of anxiety. Although there are more wizards in the kingdom than in the Orc Empire. But the Orc Empire has stronger military strength. The Orcs have extremely strong reproductive ability. Moreover, the blood wizard Safil Orin seems to have a way to create orcs, which can create orcs quickly. After these orcs are created, they have low IQ, violent nature, and like to kill. However, after Safil's blood transformation witchcraft, they have strong combat power and do not know fear. The kingdom wizard casts witchcraft to kill wave after wave of orcs. Then, there will still be orcs rushing up, as if they can't be killed at all. He saw from the letter that his brother's command ability on the battlefield is outstanding. After several battles, the Redwood soldiers he led had the lowest casualty rate among all the soldiers. Even the royal family let the remnants of other territories join his command. The army he can command is getting bigger and bigger. He can even command the army and cooperate with the wizard to kill some orc teams with strong combat power. His brother also said that he saw the legendary limb-attached knight in a battle. This knight had an orc's face, was bloated, and had various arms attached to his body, holding a knife, a chain hammer, a shield. Moreover, these weapons were enchanted. A few attacks from a formal wizard would be blocked by the shield. The limb-attached knight also had a very strong body and vitality. After the formal wizard smashed the shield, he had to release several spells to completely kill the limb-attached knight. At the end of the letter, his brother wished him a smooth practice as a wizard, and his brother also wrote a letter home and asked someone to send it to Mahogany Territory, so he didn't need to write a letter home to relay it. After reading the two letters, Ronan put them into the black storage ring. Then, he went out, rented a carriage, transported the wooden box to the Lanny vault, and deposited the gold coins into his own registered account. These days, Ronan used Hongmeng to go through almost all the knowledge in the library. He felt that there was not much knowledge in the library. The majority of them were elemental wizard knowledge. Some other knowledge, such as alchemy knowledge of medicine and mechanical alchemy, and space knowledge, were very rare. Ronan talked to Paul about this and learned that the library actually contained mostly superficial knowledge in a certain field. The main purpose of setting up a library is to lay a foundation for wizard apprentices. If you want to study further, you have to spend gold coins or college points to find professors in the college to learn. Of course, the knowledge learned simply with college points and gold coins is not precious. The knowledge that a formal wizard is willing to exchange for gold coins is definitely not the knowledge he has spent a lot of effort to research and is proud of. Paul said that the truly precious knowledge is the knowledge that a professor teaches after recognizing a wizard apprentice and accepting him as his student. This knowledge has the in-depth understanding of a certain field of knowledge by formal wizards. Ronan originally wanted to use Paul's identity to attend classes in the Kingdom Wizard Academy to learn deeper witchcraft knowledge. Especially to practice deeper space witchcraft. This is related to his further expansion of the space of the botanical garden. However, he thought about it and gave up. Attending classes requires college points and gold coins. If you spend college points and gold coins multiple times to attend the same professor's class, it means that the listener can gain something from the class. If he appears in each class with Paul's face, but Paul meets someone else, he will be found to know almost nothing but fire magic. This will increase their risk of exposure. Ronan thought about it again and felt that it was not safe enough for him to transform himself to enroll in the academy. So, he said to Paul, "Do the professors in the academy have students?" The students of formal wizards in the academy are all wizard apprentices. Since those students have learned the knowledge of formal wizards, then he can find a way to obtain knowledge from these students. As a wizard apprentice, it is very difficult to find that he drank the transformation potion. After all, in the kingdom, only a few wizards have the means to see through the transformation potion. Otherwise, the royal family would not issue a decree to strictly prohibit the transformation potion. The several major cases committed by black wizards in the history of the kingdom would not happen. Most of them will happen. What do you want to learn? Paul said. I am more interested in space magic and alchemy knowledge. Ronan said. Only by continuing to study space magic can he extend a larger space to accommodate his natal immortal tree that is growing more and more luxuriant. And the knowledge of alchemy allows him to refine a more effective growth potion. He had not attended the mysterious professor's alchemy class for a long time, because he had already mastered all the knowledge taught by the professor. And the professor would not teach more in-depth knowledge in extracurricular classes. Because once he taught in-depth knowledge, it would be easy to expose the field of pharmacy that he had studied in depth. And then, his identity was exposed. There is a formal wizard in the academy who studies space magic, Milan Quentin, the Void Walker, who has 2 students. After listening to Ronan's question, Paul replied, "Wizards who study space magic have always been rare. The 2 students usually stay at home and I haven't seen them many times. If you want to learn space magic, I can try to get close to them. There are several masters of pharmacy in the academy. As far as I know, there are 3 who have accepted students. One of the pharmacy masters, called Guman Pierre, is proficient in pharmacy, but his combat effectiveness is average. His formal wizard level is still up to the level of taking medicine. Moreover, he only needs to take medicine to become a formal wizard. It is to be able to perform the magic of refining medicine, not to improve combat effectiveness." Quote, he accepted 3 students, one of whom I met several times. Quote, however, these students have become disciples of formal wizards, and they have a bright future. Private teaching is against the laws of the kingdom, and privately teaching their own teachers knowledge is even more offensive to their teachers. Quote, even if you find them and ask them, they may not be willing to teach you. Quote, Ronan listened and nodded. Please help me find out about them first, and see where they will be active after leaving the academy. First, find a way to get close to them, and then we will talk about whether they are willing to teach. Quote, he felt that there was always a price that could be exchanged for the wizard knowledge in their hands. As long as the price was enough, they would sell it even if they risked violating the law and offending the teacher. What he had to do first was to understand what these formal wizard students and disciples wanted. Paul nodded and agreed. 5 days passed in a blink of an eye. Since meeting Paul that day, Ronan has been secluded in the bungalow. These days, he refined the green liquid of growth every day and performed the speed growth technique to promote the growth of his life tree. Beside the laboratory table, he manipulated a dozen wizards' hands, busy up and down, refining the green liquid of growth. There were 2 crucibles on the laboratory table. One crucible can only refine 5 portions of green liquid of growth. And he had 8 spiritual plants, which needed to be watered with green liquid of growth every day, so he used 2 crucibles to refine at the same time. At this time, the steps of grinding, extraction, precipitation, etc. were all carried out at the same time. To others, all the medicine refining equipment on the laboratory table were moving by themselves. After more than an hour, 8 portions of green liquid of growth were refined by him. At this time, he felt something in his heart, so he called out Hongmeng and adjusted the value. Green liquid of growth master 1% up pointing arrow. After a period of refining, the green liquid of growth finally reached the master level. After the proficiency increased, his future refining speed would be faster, and the efficacy of green liquid of growth would be better. He used the wizard's hand to pick up 2 crucibles and walked into the botanical garden. First, he poured the green liquid of growth on the 2 natal immortal trees. At the same time, he called up Hongmeng and analyzed the 2 natal immortal trees. Spiritual plant. Natal immortal tree. Year. 99 up pointing arrow. The mother tree of the natal immortal tree is now 3 meters high, and its age is close to 100 years. Spiritual plant. Natal immortal tree. Year. 25 up pointing arrow. The child tree of the natal immortal tree is also growing vigorously, always giving him feedback on the refined spiritual energy of heaven and earth. After Ronan watered the 2 natal immortal trees, he went down to the cellar and poured the green liquid of growth on 6 Qingling Qian bamboos. Then, he went to the cellar again. After putting the crucible back on the experimental table with the wizard's hand, he sat cross-legged in the botanical garden. Use the magic power of the ancient wood immortality to inject the witchcraft model of fast growth technique. With his hands open, a ray of green light fell on the mother tree of the natal immortal tree. The roots of the natal immortal tree gradually extended underground. The branches and leaves also quietly flourished. About half an hour later, Ronan suddenly felt something in his heart. He immediately summoned Hongmeng to analyze the natal immortal tree. Spiritual plant. Natal immortal tree. Year. 100 up pointing arrow. 100 years. Single quote. Ronan felt a surge of vitality emerging from deep within his body, turning into a dark green stream of light, flowing through his meridians, muscles, and bones. Instantly, he felt as if he had turned into a towering ancient tree, standing on the vast earth, with roots thousands of miles away. The green wood spirit body is done. Single quote. He immediately used the ancient wood longevity technique to inhale and exhale the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Suddenly, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around him, that is, energy particles, poured into his meridians from his acupoints at twice the speed just now. The achievement of the green wood spirit body is indeed a qualitative change. Single quote. Although the speed of absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth at this time is twice that of just now. However, it has increased by more than 100 times compared to before he started practicing. But I don't know what level of wizard qualification I have in the wizard world with the speed of absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Single quote. But if you want to test your wizard qualifications, you have to go to the Wizard Academy or Wizard School registered in the kingdom. Or, you can buy a crystal ball for testing your qualifications. However, he heard that this crystal ball is made of precious magic crystals. There are only 5 wizard academies in the huge kingdom. Most of the other wizard academies in the kingdom only have 1. This shows how expensive this crystal ball is. Ronan thought for a while and stopped worrying about his wizard level. He collected his mind and began to practice the ancient wood longevity technique. He felt the joy of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth flowing into his body. In his heart, he secretly looked forward to the next Dharma body, Yimu Dharma body. After achieving the Qingmu spirit body, the increase in physical condition seems to have increased. Single quote. Ronan felt something in his heart, so he called out Hongmeng and adjusted his physical condition. You have obtained the blessing of the heart of nature. Current status, plant affinity. Status effect. When next to plants, strength, spirit, and mana are increased. Amplification ratio, 30%. Amplification range, 100 meters. The increase ratio reached 30%, more than twice the previous one. He felt that this might be because he achieved the Qingmu spirit body and was closer to nature. The blessing of the heart of nature on him would be greater. After practicing the ancient wood longevity exercise for more than 3 hours, Ronan wanted to take a break, so he slowly stopped the exercise. After achieving the Qingmu spirit body, he always felt that his body had a strange affinity with the spiritual plants and magic plants in the botanical garden. Suddenly, he wanted to know whether the wood witchcraft would change after achieving the Qingmu spirit body. So, he used the ancient wood's longevity magic power and injected it into the witchcraft model of entanglement. Instantly, he felt the wood energy particles in the air converge towards him. With a thought in his mind, a dark green light lit up on the palm of his right hand. Then, several thick and strong vines burst out from the dark green light between his palms and entangled in the air. Even without soil, you can perform the entanglement spell. Single quote. Ronan thought in his heart, manipulating the vines that continued to extend in the air, all the way out of the botanical garden and into the living room. The vines extended to the dining table, and under his control, they entangled the handle of the copper wine pot. Ronan manipulated the vines, poured the copper wine pot, and poured a glass of wine into the wine glass next to it. The glass of wine was full and about to overflow. With a thought in his mind, Ronan put down the copper wine pot, let go of the handle, and then entangled the copper wine glass. He manipulated the vines and brought the wine glass steadily to him. Not a drop of the wine inside spilled. After Ronan took a sip of the wine, he thought that after the Qingmu spirit body was formed, the range and manipulation accuracy of the entanglement technique had increased a lot. In this way, the wood armor technique and the healing technique should also have improved. Single quote. Ronan thought of this and performed the wood armor technique. As soon as he thought of it, a dark green light flashed across his body, and in the blink of an eye, his body was covered with wood armor. With a sweep of his spiritual sense, he knew that the wood armor was much thicker than before, and it contained a richer vitality than before. He withdrew his magic power, and the wood armor dissipated immediately. Then, he injected the magic power into the witchcraft model of the healing technique. After the Qingmu spirit body was formed, he felt that his body was filled with an unprecedented vitality. Now, once the healing technique is performed, this vitality is even more vigorous. It seems that this vitality is recovery power. If I get injured, I will recover faster than before. Single quote. Ronan put away the healing technique and looked out the window. Seeing the sunset dye the street red, he thought that he had been in seclusion for many days, and today he had achieved the Qingmu spirit body, so he had to celebrate. Let's go out for a meal. Single quote. Thinking of this, he missed honey wine and beef pineapple pie again. After Ronan was dressed, he walked out of the bungalow. While looking at the scenery on the street, he walked towards the Wild Deer Bar. As he was walking, he suddenly felt something in his heart, so he looked up. He saw several lines flashing above the sky dyed red by the sunset, and waves of energy fluctuations burst out from it. This line looked familiar to Ronan. It was 4 or 5 points similar to the extended magic line in space witchcraft. Perhaps, this line is also a space magic line. Ronan's eyes followed the line that kept jumping in the air. Finally, the line passed over the sky of the Triumph City and flashed over the sky of the Upper City. Then, Ronan saw the lines open a dark crack. Several blood-stained figures were thrown out from the crack and fell towards the Upper City. What happened? This scene was not only seen by Ronan. Some sharp-eyed people, including wizard apprentices and knights, also saw it. These people couldn't help but walk towards the Upper City to see what happened. Ronan retracted his gaze and continued to walk towards the Wild Deer Bar. Compared to watching the excitement, he chose to eat. After entering the Wild Deer Bar, he swept his eyes. Seeing that Paul was not here, he found an empty seat at random, called the bartender, and ordered food and wine. While waiting, a blonde woman wearing gorgeous palace clothes and a hot body twisted and walked over. Ronan heard Paul talk about this outfit. This palace dress was modified from the dress of Princess Lanel, a famous beauty in Triumph City. Some women in brothels specially wore Princess Lanel's dresses to attract customers. Ronan waved his hand, and the woman walked away tactfully. At this time, Ronan saw that the door of the bar opened and Paul walked in. After Paul came in, he glanced around the bar and saw Ronan. His eyes lit up and he immediately walked towards Ronan. After walking past the woman in the gorgeous palace dress, he also patted the woman's tight buttocks without clothes. Then, he walked to Ronan and sat down. Ronan, something big happened. As soon as Paul sat down, he whispered in Ronan's ear. What's wrong? Ronan asked, wondering if it was related to the space magic pattern and the bloody figure he had just seen. Paul said, didn't you ask me to help you keep an eye on the wizards who study space magic these days? I asked about Milan Quentin, the Void Walker, and found out that he and 2 students went to the wizard ruins. And just now, they came back. With injuries, blood all over their bodies, they came back with space magic. I asked about them and found out that they escaped from the wizard ruins. Milan said that the wizard ruins were actually the ruins left by a necromancer, and there are many witchcraft formations involving the necromancy field. Except for us white wizards, the wizards of the Necromancer Society also went there. Quote, when they arrived at the wizard ruins, they felt like they were going home. They used the magic formations in the wizard ruins to kill many wizards and wizard apprentices. They used the blood of those wizards and wizard apprentices as ritual materials, and opened the passage to the dead plane through a magic formation in the ruins, and let a king-level dead creature from the dead plane, as well as a large group of dead creatures. Quote, the white wizard immediately fell into a bitter battle. After the Milan wizard found his friends and students, he used the space magic formations he had arranged along the way to jump all the way back. Quote, the news about the remains of the necromancer soon spread in Triumph City. In the next few days, when Ronan went out for dinner, he heard a lot about the remains of the necromancer. The most common story was about the legendary wizard of the kingdom, Dolifa Augustus, who performed a high-level sorcery to kill the king-level creatures of the undead plane, and joined other wizards to destroy the army of undead creatures, and finally destroyed the passage to the undead plane. Although the wizards of the kingdom are committed to finding a passage to the other plane to obtain resources from another plane. However, the passage they are looking for is usually unknown to the existence of the other plane. The wizards of the kingdom will quietly pass through that passage and plunder resources. This opened passage has been known to the creatures of the undead plane. Once they pass through, what is waiting for them may be the powerful force of the undead plane. At present, the goal of the wizards of the kingdom is to prevent the creatures of the undead plane from invading. Because the exit of this passage is closest to the Dawn continent. If the undead creatures come out of this passage, the first to be hit will be the Dawn continent. However, to the regret of the wizards, the leader of the undead society, who was called Holy Lord by the wizards of the undead society, escaped. This Holy Lord took advantage of the legendary wizard Dolifa's war with the monarch-level undead creatures to cast witchcraft and took away the dead wizard's soul in the ruins. After hearing this news, the people of the kingdom of Valant were in a panic for a while. The wizards of the undead society are proficient in making skeletons, rotten corpses and resentful spirits. Moreover, the strength of these three undead creatures is related to their strength in life. In the past, most of the creatures of the undead society only collected the corpses and souls of ordinary people to create three types of undead creatures. Therefore, the undead creatures they created were not so scary. Now, they have the dead souls of wizards, and the wizards have strong mental power, so the resentful spirits they create must be fierce. People in the kingdom of Valant are afraid of being harmed by resentful spirits. After hearing the news, Ronan thought of the evil repelling talisman. I wonder if the evil repelling talisman is useful for creatures in the dead plane. Single quote. Ronan decided to give it a try. He immediately went to the market and bought several chickens and several stacks of parchment. After bringing them back to the bungalow, he cut the parchment into the size of talisman paper. Then, he killed the chicken and bled it. He took out all the tools for drawing talismans, first mixed chicken blood with cinnabar to make talisman ink. Then, he picked up the wolf hair brush, dipped it in the talisman ink, and began to draw talismans. The evil repelling talisman is a first-level medium-quality talisman, and it is not difficult for him to draw it. Ronan dipped the pen full of talisman ink on the parchment, and the pen moved like a dragon. Energy particles gathered towards the tip of the pen. The talisman head, talisman heart, and talisman foot were completed in one go. Soon, there was a flash of light at the end of the talisman foot. Ronan summoned Hongmong and adjusted the value. Evil repelling talisman, 56% up pointing arrow for beginners. Just by drawing the first one, the progress of the entry level has reached 56%. This is the analogy. Ronan thought for a while, then collected his mind and continued to draw the talisman. The next day, Ronan traveled to the world of immortal cultivation and came to an uninhabited forest, recalling the method of summoning undead creatures. After he killed a wizard apprentice of the Necromancer Society in the wizard world, he got a book, Notes on Undead Plane Creatures, from the apprentice, which recorded the summoning magic array formulas of skeletons and corpses. In the notes, it is said that the combat power of the skeleton is equivalent to that of a first-level wizard apprentice. The combat power of the corpse is equivalent to that of a second-level wizard apprentice. These two undead creatures are melee creatures. The reason why they have such strong combat power is that they can resist witchcraft attacks to a certain extent. If the skeleton is within 5 meters of the first-level wizard apprentice, I am afraid that the first-level wizard apprentice's witchcraft has not yet broken up the skeleton, and it will be killed by the skeleton. In addition to the notes he got from the apprentice of the necromancer, he also got a witchcraft book, which recorded the bone meditation method. The witchcraft book said that practicing the bone meditation method would enhance the perception of the necromancer plane and gain affinity with the necromancer plane. First, less magic power would be consumed when summoning undead creatures. Second, because of the affinity with the necromancer plane, the summoned undead creatures would not choose the summoning wizard as the first target of attack, but would attack other humans. Third, it would be easier to sign a contract with the creatures of the necromancer plane. Ronan summoned the undead creatures just to test the power of the evil repelling talisman, not to attack others. As for the use of the ancient wood longevity mana to summon, it would consume a lot, but he was not worried about it. After all, he didn't summon it often. Moreover, he had 2 natal longevity trees and achieved the green wood spirit body, which absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth much faster, and the speed of mana recovery also increased accordingly. Ronan thought about it, and immediately used the power of the ancient wood longevity, chanting obscure words. Immediately, his power was released, and a witchcraft formation was slowly constructed in the air. This witchcraft formation has some shadows of space magic patterns. This witchcraft that summons undead creatures is both necromancy and space witchcraft. As Ronan chanted, he felt that the power of the ancient wood longevity was not consumed quickly. Ronan couldn't help but wonder. After thinking about it, he felt that because the ancient wood longevity skill is a wood skill, it contains the truth of the growth of plants and trees, and there is a way of withering and flourishing. Prosperity means life, withering means death. Perhaps, it is the power of withering in the ancient wood's longevity magic that fits the necromancy. Because it was the first time to cast it, Ronan's casting speed was not fast. It took 3 minutes to build the witchcraft formation. A formation like a hexagram, covered with magic patterns, was formed 5 meters in front of Ronan. Then, a ball of white light rose from this formation. Then, the white light disappeared, and a skeleton holding a white bone knife appeared. This skeleton was quite tall, at least 2 meters. 2 balls of blue flames burned in the skeleton's empty eye sockets. As soon as it came to this world, it turned its head and looked at Ronan. Suddenly, the blue flames in the empty eye sockets became stronger. It was like a hungry beast that saw blood food. It stepped forward, holding a bone knife, and rushed towards Ronan. Ronan immediately took out a talisman to ward off evil spirits and held it between the index and middle fingers of his right hand. He shook his arm and threw the talisman out. Ronan had already mastered the talisman to the point of mastery. As soon as the skeleton saw the talisman, its tall body shrank slightly, as if it was very afraid of its power. It was still rushing forward, but it leaned forward slightly to avoid the talisman. But Ronan kept using his mental power, pointed his finger, and the talisman suddenly folded in the air and still shot towards the skeleton. The skeleton was unable to dodge for a while, and the talisman stuck to its head. Snap! At the moment when the talisman stuck to the skull, a powerful force erupted deep in the skeleton's body. With a slight sound, the skeleton's entire body exploded, and the skull, ribs, and foot bones shot in all directions. Ronan slapped a few amulets on himself and picked up the skull on the ground. The skeleton's empty eye sockets looked at him dimly. The flames in it had gone out. After Ronan confirmed that the evil repelling amulet had killed the skeleton, he used a few fire amulets to burn all the skeleton's remains. After slapping a few cleaning amulets on himself, he left the forest. Knowing that the evil repelling amulet was indeed useful for undead creatures, Ronan drank the primary transformation potion and went to the Gulf Forest, a monster forest outside Triumph City, and began to hunt monsters. The fur and blood of monsters were used to make amulet pens, amulet skins, and amulet ink. The evil repelling amulets drawn in this way were even more powerful. He sacrificed 2 Qingling swords and performed the sword shadow spectroscopy. 6 Qingmang flying swords surrounded him, emitting sharp sword energy. He used the magnetic torrent, to generate a magnetic field all over his body, which repelled the Earth's magnetic field and lifted off the ground slightly. Then, he flew around the periphery of the Gulf Forest, searching for magic beasts. With his current strength, facing a first-level magic beast, he could kill it with just a wave of his hand. He released his spiritual sense, and a spiritual wave that could cover an area of 300 meters with him as the center spread out in all directions. While searching for magic beasts with his spiritual sense, he also paid attention to whether there were other people nearby. After more than 2 hours, Ronan avoided 2 teams of wizard apprentices and knights who were hunting magic beasts, and then hunted 3 magic beasts. After collecting magic beast materials and cleaning the traces with a cleaning talisman, he left the Gulf Forest. Ronan decided to process the magic beast materials in a small town mansion in the Wei Kingdom in the secular world of the Shushan world. In the rooms of this mansion, shelves were set up one by one, and pieces of animal skins that he had processed were hung on them. The animal skin was dark yellow, slightly translucent, and smooth to the touch. He also made the talisman pen and talisman ink. When the animal skin was completely dried, he could draw talismans. While the animal skin was drying, Ronan returned to the wizard world and continued to work on the evil-repelling talisman. After 3 days, he continued to draw talismans and reached the level of master. During this period, he heard a lot of news from the wizard world. First, the wizard families were quietly reshuffling. Some wizard families suffered heavy losses when exploring the ruins of the necromancer. The backbone of the family died in the ruins. As a result, other wizard families plundered some of the resources they occupied, and those declining families did not dare to resist. Most of the houses in the central city were actually the residences of the children of the wizard families. Most of them came from wizard families from other places outside the Triumph City. They came here to practice wizardry and seek development. After all, there are the most wizard organizations in Triumph City, and the types of cultivation resources are the most abundant. These days, he has seen most of the children of wizard families move out of the central city sadly. It seems that something happened to the family and they can no longer stay in Triumph City. In addition, the reshuffle of wizard organizations is roughly similar to that of wizard families. Ronan walked on the street and saw several strongholds of wizard organizations, which were closed and looked desolate. It is estimated that the backbone of the wizard organization died or was seriously injured in the exploration of the ruins, so that the strength of the wizard organization was greatly reduced and it had to withdraw from Triumph City. Ronan thought that Triumph City gathered wizards from all sides of the kingdom, and what happened in it must be a microcosm of the entire kingdom of Valant. Perhaps, wizard organizations and wizard families across the kingdom are also experiencing a reshuffle. Fort Glory, Valant Palace, Meeting Side Hall. This side hall is located not far from the bedroom of Augustus V. This is where Augustus V and several other core royal ministers held a small meeting. Augustus V is also a wizard, but he is at the level of elite wizards. Formal wizards are divided into several levels. Ordinary formal wizards are at the first level, and elite wizards are at the second level. Augustus V's great-uncle, the legendary wizard of the kingdom, Dolifa Augustus, is a 5th-level formal wizard. However, elite-level formal wizards can also live for 150 years. Augustus V is only in his 80s this year, and he still has a lot of time. Under the witchcraft, his face is quite young, and he looks about 40 years old, but his hair is a little gray. This is because he often worries about the affairs of the kingdom. At this time, he sat on the top of the long table. There were 5 people sitting on both sides of the long table. One was the chief of the royal guards, Olonor Thorn, who was both a knight and a wizard. On the road of knighthood, he was a horseman with superb sword skills. His wizard talent is not bad either, and he is now a 3rd-level official wizard, a true wizard. He practiced wizardry mainly to strengthen his physical body so that he could go further in the way of knighthood. One is the Minister of Finance, who is short and has sharp features. He is neither a wizard nor a knight, but he is good at math and has excellent communication skills, and is very popular in the royal family. One is the Minister of Intelligence, who is a slightly fat man and comes from a wealthy merchant family. Although he has no power, he has a wide network of contacts. It is said that he can also connect with wizards in the Wizard Islands. The other 2, One is the nephew of Augustus V, and the other is the eldest son of Augustus V, both of whom hold important positions in the royal family. However, these two people are not well maintained. They look older than Augustus V. Tell me, what are the casualties of each wizard family in this relic? Augustus V knocked on the long table with the ruby ring on his index finger, attracting everyone's attention, and then said. As soon as this was said, everyone looked at the Minister of Intelligence, waiting for his answer. The Minister of Intelligence looked at Augustus V and nodded respectfully. Then, he told Augustus V everything he knew. The more Augustus V listened, the gloomier his face became. After the Minister of Intelligence finished speaking, he said in a deep voice, most of the wizard families who suffered heavy losses in this relic are wizard families close to the royal family. After hearing this, the other 5 people did not show much surprise. Obviously, they also saw this. The power structure of the Kingdom of Valant is not a unified system, but a fiefdom system. Among the 7 wizard families, the Augustus family is the royal family, and the other 6 families are vassals. Although the Augustus family is powerful, the 6 families in various parts of the kingdom have knowledge in different fields and their witchcraft strength is also not weak. Because the Augustus family is afraid of the power of the other 6 families, they secretly support some wizard families and wizard organizations. In order to strengthen the power of these families and organizations, they secretly weaken the power of the other 6 families. Augustus V glanced at the others. It is obvious that among the 6 wizard families, there are families that have colluded with the undead society. Their purpose is to subvert the foundation of my Augustus family. After the hide was dried in the shade, Ronan brought it to the wizard world. He cut it into pieces the size of a talisman and drew a talisman to ward off evil spirits on them. The spiritual energy in the secular world of the world of immortal cultivation is thin, and when drawing talismans, it is impossible to gather spiritual energy at all. The spiritual energy in the wizard world is very rich. When the ancient wood longevity magic power is used and gathered at the tip of the talisman pen, the energy particles will gather like water flowing into a cave. It took most of the day for Ronan to draw 200 master-level talismans to ward off evil spirits. 100 of them were used by him to perform the initial earth control technique, and integrated into the outer wall of the bungalow. Of the other 100, 20 were hidden in his clothes, and 80 were stored in his storage black ring. With the talisman to ward off evil spirits, Ronan felt much more at ease. He immediately sat cross-legged in the botanical garden, and with a thought in his mind, the mother tree of his natal longevity tree immediately released the light golden light of the holy tree. Then, he used the ancient wood longevity technique and began to practice. With the blessing of the Qingmu spirit and the light of the holy tree, Ronan's speed of refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth increased greatly. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth around him, along with his breathing, poured into his meridians from his acupoints and then was refined into magic power by him. The mist-like green magic power in the dantian spun and gradually became thicker. 5 days passed before he knew it. Triumph City seemed to be fine. At least in Ronan's eyes, Triumph City had not changed. It seemed that the reshuffle of the wizard family had ended. The wizard families and wizard organizations after the reshuffle occupied their new territories and resources and started a new life. Early in the morning, the only window of the botanical garden was curtained by Ronan. Although the windows of the botanical garden were high, there were no tall buildings near Ronan's bungalow. Generally speaking, no one could see everything in his botanical garden through his window. But for the sake of safety, he still installed curtains. When he was practicing, he needed his natal immortal tree to release the light of the holy tree. Although there are many glowing magic plants in the wizard world, but Ronan still doesn't want others to find out that this tree can glow. The books in the library of the Kingdom Wizard Academy record the sunlight magic pattern. The curtains were drawn in the botanical garden, and there was no sunlight. Ronan engraved the sunlight magic pattern on 5 magic stones called sunstone. This kind of magic stone can amplify the power of light-based witchcraft. Ronan inlaid 5 sunstones engraved with sunlight magic pattern on the 4 walls and ceiling. The sunstones emit sunlight, illuminating the entire botanical garden. The mother tree of the natal longevity tree is growing vigorously, and its branches are constantly extending, forming a large-scale emerald green canopy. At this time, the natal longevity tree emits a light golden holy tree light, which looks quite sacred. The entire botanical garden and Ronan are covered with a layer of light gold. Ronan sat cross-legged under the natal longevity tree, clasping his hands and placing them on his legs. The verdant ancient wood longevity magic power swirled in his dantian. Ronan felt that there was a vitality brewing in his dantian. This was a precursor to a breakthrough in the realm of cultivation. Suddenly, a force suddenly erupted in the dantian and spread to his limbs and bones. The mist-like ancient wood longevity magic power in the dantian became more concentrated. Breakthrough. Single quote. Ronan slowly finished his work, summoned Hongmong, and adjusted his own values. Lifespan. 256 up-pointing arrow. Strength. 16 up-pointing arrow. Spirit. 42 up-pointing arrow. Mana. 25 up-pointing arrow. Cultivation realm. Chi refining level 9 up-pointing arrow. Wizard level. Level 3 Wizard Apprentice. Kung Fu. Ancient Wood Longevity Kung Fu 12th level 12%. Green Wood Sword Technique 6th level 23%. Spirit Evolution Technique Proficient 35%. Talisman. Flying Sword Talisman Grandmaster 81%. Golden Armor Talisman Master 35%. Wind Chasing Talisman Master 31%. Evil Repelling Talisman Master 6%. Expand. Witchcraft. Entanglement Master 53%. Wood Armor Master 12%. Healing Master 16%. Speedy Growth Technique Master 2%. Magnetic Torrent Master 68%. Light Recovery Proficient 2%. Expand. Knowledge. Magic Plant Science Master 23%. Pharmacy Master 2%. Expand. Pharmacy. Green Growth Liquid Master 12%. Primary Transformation Potion Proficient 12%. Expand. Magic Pattern. Extended Magic Pattern Proficient 35%. Sharp Magic Pattern Proficient 25%. Armor Breaking Magic Pattern Proficient 23%. Expand. Ronan learned from the secret book, Ancient Wood Longevity Art, that there are 12 levels of Chi refining. After Chi refining, it is the foundation building. However, Ancient Wood Longevity Art does not involve the foundation building. Ronan thought that it only took him about a year to cultivate to the 9th level of Chi refining. It should be soon to cultivate to the peak of Chi refining. He had to prepare for the foundation building and understand how to build the foundation. Thinking of this, Ronan used his spirit to converge the holy tree light of his lifelong tree. Then, with a thought in his mind, he traveled to the world of immortal cultivation. Ronan's figure appeared in a small town mansion in the secular world of Wei. After changing into the clothes of the immortal world, he headed towards the immortal realm of Wanjun sect. After passing through the mist array and entering the immortal realm of Wanjun sect, Ronan strolled around the market in the shantytown. Perhaps, he could buy books about foundation building only in the market. After all, foundation building is not a secret matter. After walking into Fangxi, I saw that Fangxi was still messy but lively. On both sides of the muddy road, various stalls are lined up. Those stall owners moved a small maja or just spread a piece of cloth to sit. The sounds of shouts and price cuts intersect in the market. Hey, come and see, the first order high-grade magical weapon Purple Blade can kill a late-stage Chi refining monk with one blow. Come, look over here, there's a big sale on the Immortality sect's Kung Fu. The Immortality sect's technique. Single quote. Ronan's eyes lit up after hearing this. The last time he came to the immortal domain of the Wanjun sect, he knew that the disciples of the Wanjun sect had received the news that the longevity of the Yuanying ancestor of the Immortality sect was about to expire, and they had forcibly recruited many monks from the cultivating families in the residence area to make sure that the Immortality sect attack it. But I don't know, what was the result of that attack? Ronan immediately cupped his fists at a monk walking by and said, "This fellow Taoist, I have something to ask you." The monk was a man in his 40s, wearing Confucian attire. Seeing Ronan clasping his fists, he returned the greeting. "It's not appropriate to ask for advice, it's better to give advice to each other, fellow Taoist, just say so." Ronan then asked, "I wonder what happened when the Zhen sect attacked the Changsheng sect earlier." The Confucian monk smiled slightly. "Fellow Taoist, have you been in the secular world for a while?" This matter has been spread throughout the Wanjun sect's immortal domain 5 days ago. It is said that during the attack, the ancestor of Yuanying of the Immortality sect fell, and the Immortality sect could no longer stop the Wanjun sect's offensive. The spiritual veins of the Immortality sect, as well as the immortal domain of the Immortality sect, have been occupied by the Wanjun sect. The Changsheng sect with the longest history is finally gone. Thank you. Ronan hugged his fists towards the monk. The Confucian monk also hugged his fists and walked away. Ronan's thoughts began to spin rapidly. If the Immortality sect is destroyed, then who can obtain the earthly immortal method practiced by the legendary ancestor of the Immortality sect? Single quote. While he was thinking, he walked towards the stall selling Immortality sect exercises. Fellow Taoists, come here and take a look. These techniques of mine were all collected from friends who attacked the Immortality sect. They are absolutely true. The stall owner sat on the horse and shouted loudly. This gimmick attracted many people. Many people squatted down and looked at the scrolls placed on a piece of linen cloth. Fellow Taoist, you are not being kind. A monk flipped through the scroll and said, look, these 1000 earth techniques, Chongchun technique, purple chi guidance technique, are the normal chi refining period exercises, right? What kind of Immortality sect technique is this? It's obviously a technique obtained from rogue cultivators who plundered the Immortality sect's fairyland, right? Yes, fellow Taoist, it's not good for you to do business like this. Some monks who also read the secret book said one after another. Hey, the stall owner was criticized by the monks, but there was no trace of embarrassment on his face. But the exercises I have here cover all 5 elements. If fellow Taoists have children, and the exercises you practice may not be suitable for your children to practice, you can choose one here. That's right. Some monks suddenly felt that it made sense and squatted down to select secret books. The stall owner added, besides, what I have here is not the Immortality sect's immortal realm casual cultivation technique. Look at those books. I heard from my friends that they were obtained from the corpses of the Immortality sect's chi refining monks. Quote. The stall owner pointed, and the monks' attention turned to several secret books. A monk flipped through these books, only read the previous contents, and said, it seems that these chi refining methods are also very common. The stall owner said, to be honest, fellow Taoists, what can be sold here will definitely not be some good skills. Good skills have long been taken away by the Shushan family and the Wanjun sect. However, these skills are sect skills after all. Although they are ordinary, they have follow-up skills. Everyone, if you practice these sect techniques, after reaching the foundation building stage, and join the Immortal Cultivation family or the Wanjun sect, you can search for the subsequent foundation building stage techniques of these techniques. If you only practice your own skills, if there are no follow-up skills, you will have to switch to other skills after the foundation building period. Makes sense. Some monks felt that the stall owner was right, so they continued to choose with great interest. Ronan listened to everyone's conversation and pushed forward. When he arrived at the stall, he squatted down and looked at the exercises on it. In addition to exercises, there are also several spells at the stall. However, these are all small 5-element spells below the first level mid-level, but now they cannot catch Ronan's eyes. Ronan wandered around this market for a while, and when he saw that there was nothing he liked, he went to other markets. After visiting 2 more markets, I finally found a book with The Theory of Foundation Establishment, written on a street stall. The cover is old and worn, and I don't know how many times it has been turned over by others. Ronan picked it up, flipped through it, and found that it only had the cover, and even the content on the first page was blank. Fellow Taoist, why don't you even try this book? Ronan asked the stall owner. The stall owner scratched his face. The cover of this book clearly states that it is about foundation building. If fellow Taoists are interested, I will give you a low-grade spiritual stone. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.